Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for being with us tonight. Welcome to the City of Pacifica City Council meeting for November 28th, 2022. We will open the meeting at 6:39 p.m. A little bit late. Sarah, would you like to give some updates about the meeting for us?
Sure. We're holding an in-person meeting tonight at Council Chambers with a dial-in option for live public comment. Dial-in option 650-898-6965. Conference ID 383-609-442. Pressing star 5 to raise your hand to speak on the item, star 6 to unmute, and please mute any background sound or streaming that you're listening to or watching the meeting through. Listen to your phone if you're dialing in. The meeting can be observed on local channel 26, Comcast channel 26, or at www.cityofpacifica.org/livestream. Start the roll call numbers, starting with Councilmember Beckmeyer.
Present.
Councilmember Vaterlas.
Here.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Big Stick.
Present.
Mayor Beer.
Here. Okay, I'm going to read the land acknowledgement. The City of Pacifica acknowledges that we occupy the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original habitats of the San Francisco Peninsula. We honor the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples for their enduring commitment to Mother Earth. As the indigenous protectors of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. We affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples and wish to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples. Now salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, well, good evening, everybody. We have a special presentation, and we're so happy to be able to honor our outgoing supervisor, Don Horsley. So, Don, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It's really nice to see you. I'm going to go ahead and read a proclamation. I'll hand it off to council to comment. Then I'll let you comment, and then we'll see if there's some public comment. Does that sound okay to you? Great.
Me to speak? Oh, okay. As most of you know, that I've had a long history with the City of Pacifica, starting from the time I was 12 years old, and I remember standing out on. So I have a history as both a police officer and just a county resident, and over the years, and it has been my pleasure the last 12 years to be the representative of the coast side, essentially for your supervisor, and I think I have tried always to be responsive to my constituents as well as to the council as well. The other thing I was thinking about is that one of the things I first did when I first got elected, I was going to have donuts with Don. And I remember going to these different areas of the coast side, from Pescadero to the mid-coast to Half Moon Bay and to Pacifica. And we would do the donuts with Don, and when I remember people showing up, and I'd say, okay, what are the issues? And they'd say, oh, we're here for the coffee and donuts. They didn't really have any issues, and that was because they have a city, and the city answers most of their issues. So it wasn't that much as I could do for them, but I think over the 12 years, worked with all of the city councils and helped wherever I could. And most recently, I guess, with just the issue of homelessness, which is really kind of something that I think we have all really grappled with to try to figure out. And I think we are on a good trajectory with both the city and the county. And I was just pleased to have played a small part in it. And I admire the work that all of my elected officials do in San Mateo County, and specifically in my district. I think that San Mateo County is, it's blessed. It's a unique place. In fact, my chief of staff, Chris Hunter, and I went out to the Moonraker tonight, and it is such a lovely place. It's such a lovely city, and city councils have done such a good job of preserving this town over the years that you really should be proud of yourselves and proud of the community as well, because you have really preserved a unique part of the state of California and a unique part of this.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and read your proclamation. Proclamation of the City of Pacifica in recognition of Don Horsley. Whereas the tenure of Honorable Don Horsley with the Board of Supervisors is drawing to a close following 12 years of service in the role, following 3 successful elections in 2010, 2014, and 2018. And whereas Don Horsley has dedicated his life to public service in numerous capacities, acting throughout his career as San Mateo County Sheriff, Board President of Sequoia Union Healthcare District, and member of the Board of Supervisors representing District 3. And whereas Don Horsley has led and advocated for change across a diverse set of people and communities, including Pacifica, Half Moon Bay, Pescadero, Woodside, Portola Valley, San Carlos, part of Menlo Park, and extensive unincorporated areas. And whereas Don Horsley has supported the creation of resources and facilities such as county parks, Devil Slide Trail County Park, Antonitas Creek Beach County Park, Cordilleras Mental Health Center, and Half Moon Bay Library for the benefit of his constituents. And whereas Don Horsley has tackled issues involving but not limited to housing and medical care within farming communities, repair of significant highway infrastructure, as well as procurement of fire stations and fire engines. And whereas Don Horsley proved instrumental in obtaining funding for Pacifica Coast TV, PCTV, the Gene Fassler parking lot, the Safe Parking Project, and accessible curb ramps and pedestrian crossings throughout Pacifica. Now I, Mary Beer, on behalf of the City Council of the City of Pacifica and all its citizens, do hereby honor and pay tribute to Don Horsley and thank him for his many years of public service and wish him happiness and success in his future endeavors, done the 28th day of November, 2022. Let's take a picture. Let's take a picture with Don, and then we can comment, okay?
Trip. New chairs.
Got you.
Not used to it. So, you want me to go first?
Councilmember O'Neill.
So I just wanted to say and thank Don because I know.
Speaking to you.
Oh, I just wanted to say to Don, thank you, because in addition to the items that the mayor mentioned, you also did help us get the Ohlone Interpretive Center. You were one of the movers in that. You also helped us do some work towards getting the library here. I also served with Don on LAFCO, and he always had an insight and has told me more trivia and some issues about San Mateo County that I didn't know. And it's always interesting to find out from someone as wise as a guy that was on the police and sheriff's department and rode the coast. I mean, you were there before. Did you ever work at the substation there in El Granada or Moss Beach? Or?
Yes.
You did?
I think I established that, yes, substation.
Okay. I thought you probably did and stuff, but he also was an early cop here in Pacifica. And I know he does enjoy some Irish bread every once in a while and stuff. And I just wanted to wish him the best in his retirement, and I hope we keep in touch in the future and everything. And I wish you many happy years in the future.
Thanks. Councilmember Beckmeyer.
Oh, Mr. Horsley, thank you so much for mentoring me and helping me understand how this whole thing works. I made a few mistakes, and you were kind enough to guide me back onto the path and remind me of, the way we do things. And I really am grateful for that, because that's how we learn. Your leadership on the library has been amazing, and we are challenging our citizens to complete the process, and that's going to happen. We are committed to it, right? And so thank you for all of the support that you've given to the libraries in the county for such a long time. Your leadership has really, I think, helped inspire the communities to take the steps needed to produce the funding so that we can have world-class libraries in every city in San Mateo County. So thank you. I look forward to seeing you at Nick's.
I have seen the plan that you're sitting at your Kevin Woodhouse together, and I think it's an excellent plan.
Councilmember Vaudelas.
Thank you for everything that you've done for the county, for the city. I've served with you on the One Shoreline for a while when it was called a different name. And I went to every Home for All meeting there was. You were active with that too, the library in Half Moon Bay, just the things that the other people mentioned. But I've always enjoyed talking to you because you're always just upfront and honest about everything. And sometimes I asked you for something and you said, no way. And sometimes you go, okay. So I really just appreciate you. And thank you for serving.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Hi, Don. Your service to this community is extraordinary. It's a very long list, so I am going to go for more of a personal touch, as tends to be my nature, because one of the very first experiences in any kind of local governance was when our city was touched by the death of Errol Chang in Pedro Point. And shortly thereafter, as our mayor at the time was trying to figure out what might be a helpful approach after such a tragedy, and again, I'd only been in council chambers 2, maybe 3 times by the time I met you for the first time. And I thought to myself, oh, here's somebody who has some sort of much higher power than even these council people, and I don't understand it, but here I am in the presence of such a person, and was trying to figure out anything useful to say to you, what are you going to do about it? And immediately you turned the question back to me. What do you think I should do about it, is what you said to me. Which, I don't know if you realized it, in that moment was an incredibly inspiring, empowering statement to somebody who was trying to figure out what local governance meant. And that's not the only personally inspiring thing you've ever said to me, but just in that moment, what you said to me was that you were really looking to every member of the community for whatever bit and piece of a solution you might be able to find. And that is what your leadership has represented. And for those who don't know the full story, later you were instrumental in implementing various training so that everywhere in San Mateo County, our police were trained in dealing with mental health. And I know for a fact, along with your other very long list of accomplishments, saving lives is on that list because of the service that you have been invested in for many years. So thank you. Thank you for inspiring me, thank you for saving lives, and thank you for service to our entire community. Thank you.
If I may just add, after that particular event, I did get the county to institute Laura's Law, which is a sort of a court-mandated treatment for people who are resistant to treatment. Now, it doesn't go as far as I would like, but that's what we did institute that after that with that case that was so tragic in Pacifica.
Nice, thank you. Did you want to go ahead?
I did want to mention one thing, and to thank Dawn, is that today I got a phone call that PCT did close escrow. So with the assistance of, the county, Pacifica, Half Moon Bay, as a joint partnership, it did happen.
How much was it, $100,000?
The county put in 100, and Half Moon Bay and Pacifica each put in 50.
Great, that's great.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Don, for so many things.
I'd like to acknowledge Chris Hunter, too, and thank Chris for his efforts in keeping a leash on Don and keeping the calendar and all that sort of stuff.
Well, Chris was the one who really was the sold the idea that we've got to do this, we have to do this, and we did it, so.
Nice.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, my turn. Dawn, thank you so much for so many things, and I'm also going to take a personal route here because I want to thank you for funding the prevention partnerships across the county. That work has been really very special to me. It's been my passion work for a long time now, and so to have the funding from the county serve so many different parts of our county, it's really bringing prevention and early intervention work together and connected across our cities, and it's really strong. So thank you so much for that. It means a lot to me and to my family. And also, I'd like to thank you for the work that you're doing to end homelessness in our county. I have a loved one who is in interim housing, and I want you to know that the system is working. There's people there, there's care on site, there's food, there's wraparound services. It is working, and so thank you from the bottom of my heart for that and everything else.
And I just have to add one more thing. I thought you were going to mention it, and since you didn't, I will. Your leadership with LGBTQIA and all of the services on the coast side, because pulling that together and having the site in Half Moon Bay has really helped us, all of us on the coast side, and really, I think, been a spark for our own Pride activities in Pacifica, which we're already planning for June 3rd. June 3rd.
Well, I notice you have this ending hate. If you were to think about, how do you stop gun violence? And you've seen these cases all over the country, and I think San Mateo County is somewhat doing better. We can't, gun control is almost something that's unreachable, but dealing with things like hate, having young men mostly, because it is mostly young men, who don't feel so isolated, who have access to mental health, I think is really not the whole solution, but part of the solution. So I applaud all that you do for mental health and for making people in your community feel involved and part and parcel of the community. That I'm grateful for the service I was able to enjoy over the past 12 years, and loved working with all of you, and wish all of you the best. And I think you all have my phone number if you need me.
Yeah.
Just advice is what it's worth. It's worth what you pay for it. So, and it's all free. So in any case, thanks very much.
Thank you. I wanted to open up public comment. Is that what you were going to say, Kevin? Oh, and there's refreshments and cookies in the back. Please have some. That would be great. But I did want to see if there's public comment. Is there anyone on the phone? You can dial in at 650-898-6985. The conference ID is
6965.
6965. Thanks.
No.
Conference ID is 383-609-442. You press star 5 to raise your hand and star 6 to unmute. State your full name at the start of the comment and mute any background sound. Do we have any public comment in the room? Seeing none, is there anybody on the phone?
There are none.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Don, for everything. Go ahead.
Mayor, are we going to break briefly for refreshments, or
Let's
did you want to
break
continue
briefly for
on?
refreshments. I think we should. 5, 10 minutes? 10 minutes? Okay. All right, let's break. We will begin with the consent calendar. If any council members wish to pull an item from consent, please do so now. We'll be pulling any items from the consent calendar.
No.
Seeing none, we'll go to public comment. You can dial in 650-898-6965. Conference ID is 383-609-442. Press star 5 to raise your hand, star 6 to unmute. Do we have anyone on the phones?
We do not have anyone. We have one person on the phone, but no raised hands.
I'll give them a minute, yeah. We have no cards from the audience, so if you're on the phone line and would like to make a public comment for the consent calendar, please raise your hand now. Press star 5 to raise your hand, and we can call on you. Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment, bring it back to council.
I move that we accept the consent calendar as stated.
Before I second, I had a couple questions, a little tiny edits for the minutes.
Great.
Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
So if I may, on packet page 16, in the 1, 2,
And just
3.
I think we need to be mindful about the microphones.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but it's
Am I
just
not
so
close
soft.
enough?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so rare. In the paragraph under Mayor Beer closed public comments, in the third line, I think the word speaking is meant to be the word seeking. And then there was a little thing on packet page 22. And in the paragraph where Mayor Beer is speaking, the 6th line from the bottom of that paragraph, it says thanked that family, and I think she meant it to read Pacific as environmental family.
I did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think that was really it. Other little tiny things, but nothing.
No,
Now I'll second.
Thank you.
So the motion includes the edits.
The motion includes the edits. Okay. Wait.
Sort of. 1, 2, 3.
Wait for.
I'm going to reset the vote so we can get the votes aligned with the names.
No, I'm this one.
I'm going to try this one, Sarah. This time.
Left, right?
She's going to clear it.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Stand up, sit down, fight. That one didn't work.
All right, so
Okay, so yours still doesn't work. And then yours looks like
Uh-oh, now I
it's,
pushed it.
you see the light on
Is
it?
there a little switch? To reset?
there's a ghost in the switches. I know there is. I press the same one every time, I swear.
Are we voting again?
Yes.
Oh, should we press?
Are you telling me how to vote, or do you answer?
Oh, no, I mean, maybe.
Okay, I'm going to call a roll call back.
I think you
Okay.
just should do that for a while, and we'll figure it out.
Councilmember Beckmeyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vaterlos,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Neill,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Big Stick,
Yes.
Mayor Beer,
Yes.
and the motion to pass the consent calendar with item number 2 as amended passes unanimously.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We're now going to move on to oral communications. This portion of the agenda is available for the public to address the city council on any issue that is not on the agenda. Any person wishing to address the council shall be recognized by the mayor during oral communications, provided, however, that during the oral communication portions of the agenda, only items not on the agenda for that meeting may be addressed. All remarks should be addressed to council as a body and not to any member thereof. There'll be a maximum of 3 minutes allowed for any speaker. I see no yellow cards from the audience. I will turn to the phones. Emily, do we have anyone on the phones?
We have 3 members on the phone. No raised hands, but we did get notification that one of them wanted to speak beforehand. So I guess we can wait to do the whole.
Okay, sure. We'll give you just a minute. If you'd like to make a public comment on items not on the agenda, please raise your hand by pressing star 5. We'll just wait a second. That's not for me.
Okay, we have a raised hand from the phone number ending in 2494.
Okay, 2494, you can speak if you'd like to, please.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
Oh, great. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Danielle La Campagna, and I'm with Citizens for a San Mateo County gun buyback, a group that has raised funds to give out during the buybacks. I wanted to let Pacifica residents know that there will be an anonymous gun buyback in San Mateo County on Saturday, December 3rd, this Saturday, from 10 to 2 o'clock in San Carlos at 1000 Skyway Road, right off the freeway. The event is anonymous. Please transport firearms unloaded and in the trunk of your vehicle. $100 will be given out for handguns, shotguns, and rifles, and $200 for assault weapons and ghost guns. There will also be $50 received for non-functioning firearms. While our group assists in a few additional ways, the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office manages operations at the buyback with assistance from Belmont and Redwood City officers and support from San Carlos. During the previous 5 buybacks since 2018, more than 2,000 unwanted and or unsecured firearms were turned in. To be exact, it was 2,017 firearms. We have found that the majority of buyback participants have inherited the firearms. Our group has been proud to partner with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office to provide a safe, voluntary option to rid one's home of firearms. Participants have been grateful for a safe, organized event. Please help spread the word to residents. Our group passed on a flyer to your city for the event and thanks officials and staff for any help promoting the December 3rd gun buyback. We hope to see some of you there. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much.
There are no other raised hands.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close oral communications and bring it back to council for council communications. Who would like to begin?
I will.
Councilmember Vaterlos.
I met with Council Member-elect Christine Bowles at her house and did a tour of her house to see the zero energy. It was interesting and I learned a lot. And, I went to the Council of Cities, where we talked about what's happening in Belmont and their new facilities. The Democrats was a Jackie Spear event, and we got to say goodbye to her there, and then we had an event here giving her proclamation. The PCT Awards I watched on TV, and we had some subcommittee meetings, but also I understand that Small Business Saturday was a huge success and very crowded, and I'm happy to hear that. I have a sweatshirt from John the Sign Guy, Got Fog, so I hope everyone got what they needed that day, and I heard it was enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? Councilmember O'Neill.
Yeah, I went to some of the same meetings that Sue Vaterlaus went to. I also went down to Palmetto and to Small Business Saturday and saw a lot of people I knew. My daughter and my wife actually said, let's just understand, if you're walking down the street and you start chatting, we're going to keep walking because you keep talking. So anyhow, that's what happened on Saturday or Sunday when they had the event. I attended the LAFCO meeting. We had the LAFCO meeting, also attended the San Mateo County Visitors Bureau mixer in Burlingame, and that was a big success. Had a lot of people. It was done with their there with their chamber. Attended the commute.org board meeting, and nothing really there to report. We did have a council session meeting on Thursday the 17th. Let's see, what else was there? I attended the Jackie Spears thing on Saturday the 19th. I had a call regarding the future of the Library Foundation on last Tuesday. I also, Thanksgiving, we all had Thanksgiving. I hope everybody did good there. I also came across an article, and I think this is something, given the issues we're facing here in the city, that I'm trying to find it so I can. It's something for the police chief to do. Not that he's got a lot of extra time, but San Mateo has come up with a catalytic converter theft prevention program called CatGuard, and I know we cannot afford it because San Mateo Police is actually doing this as no cost for the residents. We can't do that, and I have no idea how much it costs. But I was thinking if it would be nice if we could look at this and see if there's something we could offer the citizens. What they do is there's two labels that will break into, they take a cold catalytic converter, put these labels on it, and then turn it on, and it permanently etches the serial number of the car, or the VIN number in there. So if they go to fence it, the people know that this is stolen, okay? And apparently there's several auto shops doing that down there, but they also give you a sticker to put in your window to show your car has CatGuard on it. And given the number of catalytic converter thefts in Pacifica, it might be nice for us to look into it and see if that is something we can do at some, I don't know how much it costs or anything, but if the police chief could look into that, I think that'd be a good service for the citizens.
Awesome.
That's it.
Thanks, Mike. Councilmember Beckmeyer?
I was just checking to see what I had to note for my activities. I know that on the 15th of November, I attended the Economic Opportunities Study at the Community Center, and there weren't as many in-person attendees as we'd hoped for, so I did want to underscore that there's a survey that's out that folks can go to the city's website and complete to give feedback on the economic opportunities study work done by Cosmot Industries. What I really appreciated about it is the idea of breaking Pacifica up into several different business districts and looking at and maximizing what is unique and what is an opportunity in each of those districts. So please take a look at that if you can. There was a huge opportunity the mayor and I had on the 17th to serve lunch at the senior center on Crespi, and it was a blast. We had a really, really good time. Our chef and our senior services department is amazing, and it was truly an inspiring event and fun, and I'm looking forward to the next opportunity to do that. Attended a meeting of the Coastal Cities Group. This is the group of coastal cities throughout the state of California. This is the leadership committee, and we're planning a meeting in Santa Barbara in January. And the purpose of it is to work with stakeholder groups on issues related to implementing the Coastal Act and sort of taking to that next step. Cities who are working on the LCPs, what are the challenges they're facing? Groups like Surfrider have been invited to attend. Groups like Smart Coast have been invited to attend. And I'll have more details soon, but that is in the offing, and I'll be attending that meeting. And, of course, the meetings that we had, attended the Democrats, and then here our thank you and tribute to outgoing Congresswoman Jackie Spear. That's it.
Thank you, Sue. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I always do, I begin by remembering the Ukraine, who looks like we'll be going through a very long winter shortly. My prayers are with them. I attended an emergency preparedness meeting. There was a great presentation on Zone Haven, which is still a relatively young tool to identify, in case of worst case scenarios, basically how to properly evacuate. It's the way that police and fire will be able to interact with the citizenry to help them figure out proper evacuation and to let you know what's going on in your zone. So if you go to myzone.zonehaven.com, you can figure out quickly and easily what your zone is. I left some magnets in the back last week. I'm not sure if they're still there or not. But check out the website. Check out SMC Alerts also if you haven't already. It works closely with Zone Haven so that in worst case scenarios, everyone can be kept apprised. And we were also made aware of the MyShake app, which is gathering data about earthquakes. I'm not sure if the app actually alerts you to potential earthquakes also, but it's a tool that's going to help with earthquake preparedness, so check it out. I attended the North Coast County Water District meeting after the emergency preparedness meeting. I learned a lot about North Coast County Water that I didn't know before, and it was instructive for me to know how much I didn't know. Some of the topics they talked about, and there were a lot of topics, but like their update on their district headquarters update project, they talked about the low aquifers. Students are measuring fog from a fog collection project that they're working on. Samantha Hauser with our planning commission is a part of that project. There's going to be a groundwater study they're doing, and it looks like they'll be putting a test well at the Sanchez Art Center, so presumably council will learn more about that soon. Up on Sheila, there's a water tank being replaced, if you're familiar with that area. And as I was learning, and many more other topics also, I was thinking to myself it would be great to assign a council liaison to North Coast County Water District. Not that a liaison would participate like we usually would, but just having a council member there to find out what's going on and report back to us monthly, I thought would be a good idea. So we'll talk about that more in the coming year, I think. Attended Belmont Council of Cities with my fellow council members and heard about their fabulous development projects. It was really heartwarming to hear the electeds who will be departing their councils speak. All of the departing electeds were given a moment to speak on whatever they wanted and impart wisdom or tell stories. It feels like there must have been 100 years worth of collected stories going on in that room, and it was just a really lovely moment that we all got to share. Did the City Democrats meeting with Jackie before our special meeting here. And then this morning there was or this afternoon rather, there was a Peninsula Clean Energy meeting with some of the board members and State Senator Josh Becker. Of the many topics, there was a good conversation around incentivizing electrification, such as possibly doing credits for appliance installation down the road. We discussed the regional Brown Act concern that maybe for regional bodies, it would be nice to be able to retain the ability to use Zoom. And we had a good discussion around grid reliability, encouraging battery purchase to offset nighttime consumption, and frankly, nighttime rates, because it's often a little bit more expensive at night, and the pros and cons of microgrids. Aside from these meetings I attended, I hear that Officer Henry Tran was awarded our Employee of the Quarter from Pacifica Police. I'd be delighted if during staff communications we could hear more about Henry Tran. And I wanted to thank our city manager, Kevin, for successfully helping us navigate Measure Y. We go from a position in which we weren't sure whether or not we might have to lay off employees to at least being able to maintain our city services. And amongst all of our staff who put in the effort, the leadership of Mr. Woodhouse, I want to recognize. So thank you, Kevin.
Mike, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I did want to mention, especially given our agenda with REACH codes, that I attended the congestion management meeting today, and they had successfully applied for a grant, and they were able to change, they replaced the stoplights and reconfigured the stoplights on Ralston Road, which, if any of you are familiar with in Belmont, is actually a very busy street, a lot of cars idling and a steep hill. But after they configured the lights and were able to replace them, they were saving 252,000 tons of greenhouse gases by what they were able to do with the street lights. And I just thought that was kind of interesting, because that's the biggest bang for the buck I have heard of. So.
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to start out, I have an apology to make to OSPAC, which is our Open Space and Parkland Advisory Committee. I missed the meeting this past month, so I wanted to send my apologies for that and let them know that I'll be checking in with the chair and catch up that way. I attended the joint articulation meeting, which is a meeting with the Pacifica School District, Jefferson Union High School District, the city, and the Water District. I also attended the Economic Opportunities meeting, and while it was a smaller crowd, the conversations around the table were really rich, and so I really appreciated hearing the conversations that happened, and I appreciated our staff for facilitating those conversations. I think they were really important. It was awesome serving the senior Thanksgiving meal. That was really great. I attended our Pacifica Pride planning meeting. We have quite the planning group put together, so it's looking good, and we will keep you updated as we move forward with the planning for that. We're starting good and early, and we are very organized, which is helpful. Said goodbye to Jackie Spear, which was emotional and wonderful, so it was really nice to be able to have the opportunity to spend all morning with her. And then in the evening to check out PCT Honors, which was really great. So thank you, PCTV, for everything that you do. And then the small business Sharp Park event was great. And that was the first time I ever went into Cotton Crustaceans. Have you been in that store? Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. Like I walked in, I was like, oh my, I felt bad. It's been there a year. Anyway, it's awesome, so check it out. And then I'm gonna spend the last part of my communications reading a letter of commendation to Chuck Pamikpik, who is retired from our Pacifica firefighters. He did not want us to do, he didn't want to be here in person. He didn't want to make a big deal about his retirement. but we wanted to make sure that he understands how much we appreciate him. So I'm going to go ahead and read that letter now. On behalf of the City of Pacifica, I am hereby pleased to write this letter of commendation for Chuck Pamikpik, who has been an integral part of the North County Fire Authority since his hire on August 24th, 1984, totaling 38 years of service. 38 years of service. Chuck started working for the city as a firefighter. He responded to countless structure fires, vehicle accidents, and medical emergency calls in Pacifica and the surrounding cities of Pacifica. Furthermore, he worked throughout the state to control wildland fires as requested by the California Office of Emergency Services. He was promoted from firefighter to fire captain to fire battalion chief and to his final position as deputy fire chief, where he oversaw the Administrative Services Bureau, the Emergency Medical Services Division, and the Emergency Preparedness Division. One of Chuck's greatest achievements was the development of a new mapping system. For 2 years, Chuck hand-drew maps of all of Pacifica's streets, house addresses, and fire hydrants. It marked a significant improvement not only for the fire department, but also police, public works, and other City of Pacifica departments. For this project, Chuck was awarded the Moose Lodge Firefighter of the Year in 1991. Chuck carried out his duties with professionalism and pride and demonstrated the utmost commitment to the North County Fire Authority and the City of Pacifica. He received the 2010 Annual Lions Club Award for Valor, as well as the Outstanding Performance Award in 2016 as a paramedic from the San Mateo County Emergency Medical Services. He consistently exceeded expectations throughout his time at the city. The City of Pacifica is very fortunate to have had Chuck's service to its businesses and residents and is honored to acknowledge his many contributions as Deputy Fire Chief. He is a highly respected leader recognized by his peers, his supervisors, staff from other city departments, and the city manager. The city is thankful for his efforts and dedication to keep Pacifica safe and wishes him a well-deserved retirement. Sincerely, Mary Beard. Thank you so much, Chuck. Wow, that's an amazing set of work. So thank you so much, Chuck. We appreciate you.
Well-deserved retirement.
Absolutely.
Mayor,
That
if
was
I may.
an amazing acknowledgement.
Yeah, please go right ahead.
I'm sorry, Sue?
Thank you so much, Chuck, for your service here. That was an amazing letter with your accomplishments. Just the addresses and the fire hydrants. Amazing.
I also wanted to mention is Pacifica, we're lucky we have our firefighters, but we also have to share them under mutual aid. And I happened to be Chuck's neighbor at a house. We were growing and he had his wife and his young kids, 2 young kids were there. But in an '89 quake, he was called out to go to San Francisco. So he was actually fighting the fires in the Marina district of the '89 quake. So it just shows the quality of a person that they leave their wife and the young kids. I mean, I think they were both the kids were under 3 to go off and fight fire in another city. So thank you, Chuck.
Beautiful. Did you want to say something, Councilman Becker?
I had one other item I wanted to add. Of course, I'm
Me too.
so grateful to Chuck for everything he's done for our department, for all the way up through the ranks through the years. I think the legacy is going to leave Pacifica much safer, his legacy, and I wish him well in retirement.
Thank you. Councilmember Vavalas.
I wanted to remind everyone that we have the Rockaway tree lighting on Sunday, the 4th, from 4 to 7. Santa will be arriving in the fire truck, and there are lots of activities for everyone to do. Also, on another subject, I was talking to Chris at the garbage company, and the garbage that people are leaving out is excessive. And I want to remind people that everybody has to pay for that. When people leave their trash out and it gets picked up, it's going to cause rate increases, and it is dramatically more than it has been in the past. So they have services, they have dump services, you can do large pickups. Please do it the right way. So, thank you.
I'm just going to tag on to that. We're talking, when you say trash, you know, it looks like, oh, someone threw a bag of trash and left it on the street. We're talking freezers full of meat
Rotten
left on streets, refrigerators being dumped. This kind of stuff, as Councilmember Vadalar said, is going to cost every ratepayer in Pacifica. So I'm going to go back to our police and public safety. If you see something, say something. This has to be curbed. It has to be curtailed, and the only way to do it is to catch people, and the only way to figure it out is if you see someone describe the truck, I mean, you don't get a freezer full of meat there in your, Honda Civic. So clearly a truck brought it from somewhere. So please, community, let's rally together on this.
I was just going to say, one thing you might ask is there's a lot of hauling companies, and you take and you hire them to haul stuff out of your yard. Some of the more unscrupulous ones just dump it on the street. You think that you're doing what they need to be done, but there has been proven in other cities, I know, that they do dump it on the street. So they're making money off this while it's costing you, the taxpayer, ratepayer, money to do that. I also wanted to mention, as a takeoff of the tree lighting ceremony, the city is sponsoring a holiday parade on Sunday, the 4th, at 3 o'clock on Palmetto. It starts at Ingrid B. Lacey and is going down to Clarendon starting at 3, and then Santa's going down to Rockaway Beach after that. So the festivities start at 3.
And there's also festivities at the community center on Friday evening where there'll be, we'll light the building, the elf market will begin, so there's a lot of things going on this weekend. Okay, I'm going to hand
one last
Oh,
one,
please.
if I may, and
Please.
it's complementary with the activities mentioned on Sunday. There's the Holly Jolly Palooza at Eureka Square Shopping Center that will be supporting lots of small businesses.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over for staff communications to City Manager Woodhouse.
Thank you, Mayor Beer and Mayor Pro Tem Big Stick and council members. I have to be very careful, and we're all mindful of speaking directly into our microphone, so I may not be looking at you as much as I normally do as I focus on the microphone. To that point, we are continuing our work on improving the audio system in the council chambers and have received a bid for some new microphones as well as other audio equipment to improve the sound in here. So we'll continue and look forward to that. We don't know what the timeline is on that because of the tendency for electronic gear to be back ordered currently. I wanted to reiterate a couple things that had already been mentioned. One is the caller and oral communications had mentioned, and I'll just reiterate the details about the anonymous San Mateo County anonymous gun buyback that's occurring on this Saturday, December 3rd, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in San Carlos. And there's a flyer for those that are here in person. There's a flyer on the back table, and we will also be pushing this information out in our weekly electronic newsletter. A couple economic development notes. One, which has been mentioned, is that the Small Business Saturday was a huge success. NBC Bay Area did a story on this, and they have a video, but if you read the printed version of the story, it highlights Pacifica and the number of businesses that participated and the crowd. And I believe on the video version there are some shots of the Royal Bee Yarn Company in there. So that was great to see in there. Also related to economic development efforts for small businesses, which our Economic Development Program and Committee are very focused on, there is an upcoming Business Resource and Networking Night, which will be, it's presented by the Economic Development Committee. It is this Wednesday at Table Wine, beginning at 7 p.m. That's November 30th. I believe that's Wednesday, at Table Wine at 7 p.m. Finally, two final items. One was, it really was a pleasure. I helped serve Thanksgiving lunch to the seniors as well, and that was a great pleasure. It was a packed house. There were over 90 participants in that, enjoying that lunch, and there was a huge amount of smiling and laughing. It was a great event, and hats off to our community center staff, senior staff, in pulling that off, and to the chef. And lastly, I'd like to call up Interim Chief Stratton to say some words about our police department employee of the quarter. I believe Mayor Pro Tem Big Stick had requested more information, and he's here actually to make comments about Officer Tran. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Yeah, I'd like to recognize Officer Tran for Employee of the Quarter, which is July through September of this year. And I'd like to just read you the recognition. For the third quarter of 2022, I am pleased to recognize Officer Henry Tran as our Employee of the Quarter. Officer Tran was hired in June of 2021. He completed the field training program in September of 2021 and was assigned to AWatch working weekends. He completed his probationary period in September of 2022 and is currently assigned to C-Watch working. Since entering the field training program, Officer Tran has demonstrated a strong work ethic and a talent for finding criminals. He stays busy on his shifts, handling calls for service, and proactively initiating car stops, seeking those engaged in criminal activity. He has proven to be proactively, I'm reading this off my cell phone, by the way. Actually, in the 3-month period, his efforts has been proven to be fruitful. In the 3-month period, Officer Tran was responsible for 24 arrests. Most of these were the result of officer-initiated activity. These are impressive numbers for an officer of his tenure. Officer Tran has established a reputation as a good teammate. He always has a positive attitude and is always willing to help out the other officers on his shift. Officer Tran was nominated for this recognition by 2 supervisors, and he was also previously nominated for Employee of the Second Quarter in 2022. So Henry, thank you for your hard work, supporting your teammates, and your tenacious efforts to seek out criminal activity in our community. Your efforts are appreciated and serve as an example to others. You have a bright career ahead of you. Officer Tran.
Nice. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on now to our public hearings, which is item number 5. We have Christian Murdoch here to present the staff report on the public hearing to consider the adoption of an ordinance to adopt the 2022 edition of the California Building Standards Code and Fire Code with local amendments, including amendments to require building electrification, REACH codes, underground utility installation, and expanded geotechnical hazard evaluation. Thank you, Christian, as always.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and honorable council members. Planning Director Christian Murdoch. I'm joined as well by Assistant Fire Marshal Craig Whitten and also by Contract Building Official Greg McFan. And we have dialed in by phone, if necessary, Blake Hershoft from Peninsula Clean Energy. I will take a few extra minutes today to go through the presentation. I moved quickly at the last City Council meeting, but tonight being a public hearing, I think the council and the public will benefit from a bit more attention to the material. So tonight we're here in relation to the building code update process. The building code update is required under state law every 3 years, and the city is required to adopt the statewide model code and can consider local amendments to the statewide model code due to unique climatic, topographic, or geologic conditions. And the adoption of the code must be effective by January 1st of 2023 for this triennial update. We are at the last stage in the building code process, which is to update process, which is to conduct a public hearing and to consider adoption of the ordinance, which the City Council introduced as amended on November 14th, the last regular City Council meeting. The City Council will consider local amendments in the ordinance that's been introduced in 5 categories. Continuation of local amendments from the 2019 Triennial Code update, except where they've been superseded by the 2022 Model Code. Updates to comply with changes in state law since 2019. This includes things like electric vehicle charging, accessory dwelling unit fire sprinklers, and so on. And then 3 categories of local amendments unique to issues that have come up recently, including geotechnical hazard assessments, which came up during the general plan update process, underground utility installation, which will align the building code with other city programs and policies and standard practices, as well as general plan requirements. And then reach codes for new buildings, modifying those adopted in 2019 related to building electrification. Continuation of the 2019 local amendments involves local amendments that have been part of the building codes for several cycles, affecting the building code, residential code, electrical code, plumbing code, and fire code. And otherwise, there will be minor changes as well to renumber to align with the 2022 code structure, correcting typos, and to incorporate some minor adjustments to structure. New local amendments include, as I mentioned, updates to fire sprinkler provisions for accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, updating electric vehicle parking charger requirements, and the local amendments that I've outlined already. The geotechnical hazard assessments would affect the building code and the residential code and expand the soils report requirements, which essentially focus on design of the building or the structure in question, but doesn't require a holistic assessment of the area around that structure to consider if there are, for example, upslope or downslope hazards that might affect the structure or the building, or that might cause the new development to affect existing development elsewhere. And so this would require a broader assessment of the standard building code or residential code requirements, and would supplement other processes to evaluate similar hazards in the general plan for our discretionary permit processes and the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. The next local amendment to be considered by the council relates to underground utility installation, and in general would require all new utility lines and upgraded utility lines to be installed underground. And to clarify, this means the points of connection from whatever main or existing service line to the structure, and does not mean undergrounding the neighborhood-wide distribution lines. For example, electrical lines on the utility poles that run from pole to pole and serve the broader neighborhood. There would be exceptions in a few instances, such as when a public right-of-way has been paved within the prior year. It would require more than 500 feet of trenching to underground, or the utility carrier has determined it's infeasible or impractical and would refuse to provide service. And again, this utility undergrounding requirement would implement 2040 general plan policies related to undergrounding of utilities and would help to reduce wildfire risk. Related to reach codes and building electrification, those local amendments would apply to new buildings only and would apply to those constructed on or after January 1st of 2023. And in general would prohibit conversion of those buildings that were constructed as new buildings subject to the reach codes, conversion of those to revert back to gas appliances, with the exception being for-profit restaurants that meet certain requirements. And this is the same exception that was in the 2019 reach codes for for-profit restaurants. And then I'll spare you the details. I can answer questions, and it's also outlined in the staff report, but essentially the reach code ordinance local amendment would also expand electric vehicle charging requirements based on the building types in question. One category of requirements for single-family and two-family dwellings, a different requirement for buildings with 3 or more units, and then different standards for non-residential. This is of note in that the City Council established 2 additional use categories that deviate from the model code presented by the Bay Area Reach Code Group. And so the recommended action tonight, which is a culmination of several public input opportunities, including specific City Council discussion and community input on the reach codes, and the prior discussion item at the last City Council meeting in relation to introduction of the ordinance. The culmination of that has been the ordinance introduced by the City Council on November 14th, which staff recommends that the City Council adopt following tonight's public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. Do we have any questions from council before we go to public comment? Okay, we're going to go ahead and open up public comment. I would Encourage folks on the phone, if you'd like to call in, 650-898-6965. Conference ID is 383-609-442. Press star 5 to raise your hand and star 6 to unmute. And please turn down any background sound you may have. We have one card from the public. Margot, it's your turn. Come on up. Thank you so much.
Hello and good evening, Mayor Beer and members of City Council. My name is Margot Myman, and I'm here to tell or remind whoever might be tuning in tonight about why building electrification is important. But first, I have a few numbers for you. The first number is 100. There are about 100 cities in the U.S. that have adopted various forms of all-electric building codes. And if you think about it, that's not very many, just 100. The second number is 68. On November 16th of this year, the city of Atherton was the 68th city in the state of California to adopt an all-electric building code. So here in California, we are on the forefront of this effort. Last number, 17. Pacifica was the 17th city in the entire state to adopt its first REACH code for new construction back in 2019. This means that we're among the first 20 cities in the entire nation to do so, and this is fantastic. Why are electrification REACH codes important? They are important because gas is now the biggest driver of carbon pollution growth worldwide, and it has overtaken coal as the largest source of carbon pollution from the U.S. power sector. REACH codes are important because natural gas contains methane, and massive amounts of methane are leaked at every stage of its production and distribution. We care about methane leaks because methane has 80 times the warming power of carbon dioxide during its first 20 years in the atmosphere. So even though carbon dioxide has a longer lasting effect, methane is really what is setting the pace for warming in the near term. So as we turn and head into 2023, we should not be increasing our use of fossil fuels, and the REACH codes that you are updating are important because they limit the expansion of natural gas infrastructure while also increasing the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So this is a good thing. To be sure, there are plenty of challenges in transitioning away from fossil fuels to renewable energy such as wind and solar. This is the existential problem of our time, and we could talk about how to make this a reasonable and equitable transition for hours and hours, and actually I hope we can have those conversations next year. In the meantime, I encourage my Pacifica neighbors to learn more about electrification by visiting the website for Peninsula Clean Energy. PCE is the electricity supplier here in Pacifica, and their website is simply peninsulacleanenergy.com. So homeowners and renters can find very helpful information there. And again, it's peninsulacleanenergy.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Do we have anyone on the phone?
We have one raised hand. It is the number ending in 0460.
Okay. 0460. You can press star 6 to unmute. And also
City
mute.
Council members, my name is Nancy Tierney, and I live in the Lower Manor District. I want to express support for the proposed action to adopt the ordinance on the 2022 edition of the California Building Standards Code and Fire Code local amendments. My message in support of this ordinance at the first reading on November 14th focused on two primary reasons: to join other Bay Area cities like San Mateo in approving building electrification measures for existing buildings and remodels as a necessary step to reduce indoor pollution, and to demonstrate the power of small cities to lead on environmental measures. These reasons still hold. I'd like to challenge Council to think more broadly about what we can do to ensure a healthier planet for all species, including humans. In addition to adopting more aggressive REACH codes in our cities, we can oppose the proposal by the California Public Utility Commission, CPUC, known as Net Energy Metering 3.0 or NEM 3.0. Scheduled for a vote on December 15th, this extreme proposal would slash the value of solar energy by 75% while boosting utility profits at the expense of the public starting next year. These changes would make it more expensive for households, churches, businesses, and schools currently without rooftop solar to invest in solar technology. Adopting NEM 3.0 is a backwards move for California, diminishing the value of rooftop solar. Instead, we should be making rooftop solar more affordable for everyone. The takeaways from my statement are twofold. Vote to adopt the 2022 edition of the California Building Code as proposed, and express public opposition to the CPUC proposal that would make rooftop solar unaffordable for the majority of Californians. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Are there any other callers?
There are no other callers.
Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council. I see a light on from Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know if my fellow councilors have comments to make. I would very much like to make the motion on this one.
Make the motion.
Okay. And a couple comments I actually have before I do. The last caller talked about the net energy metering, NEM 3.0. We had a very good discussion. I mentioned we were talking to Josh Beck earlier, some of the PC board members, and we, amongst the other things we discussed, was the NEM 3.0. So I want to let Nancy know that we are in discussion with our state representative, and if PCE reaches out to the various city councils to send a letter, I'll be happy to bring that to council at the time. Also, I'm looking forward to goal setting in March to discuss where we might check in with existing codes. And again, I'm watching San Mateo, the city of San Mateo, carefully on that. So that having been said, I move to adopt an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pacifica repealing and replacing Chapters 1 Building Code, 2 Mechanical Code, 3 Plumbing Code, 4 Electrical Code, 5 International Property Maintenance Code, 6 Energy Code, 7 Green Building Code, 7.5 Residential Code, 8 Historical Building Code, 8.5 Existing Buildings Code, and 9 Reference Standards Code of Title 8 of the Pacifica Municipal Code to adopt by reference the 2022 California Building Standards Code, California Code of Regulations, Title 24, Parts 1, 2, 2.5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 11, and 12, and the 2021 International Property Maintenance Code, and making certain amendments thereto, repealing and replacing Article 1, Fire Code of Chapter 3, Fire Protection of Title 4 of the Pacifica Municipal Code to adopt the 2022 California Fire Code, California Code of Regulations, Title 24, Part 9, and making certain amendments thereto, and finding adoption of the ordinance exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA.
Second.
Will we do roll call again?
Yes, so I heard the
Okay.
motion as recommended by Mayor Pro Tem Big Stick and seconded by Councilmember Beckmeyer. I'll start the roll call vote with Councilmember Beckmeyer.
Yes.
Councilmember Vaterlos.
Yes.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Big Stick.
Yes.
Mayor Beer.
Yes.
And that passes unanimously.
Thank you so much for all of your work on that.
Why are you using two microphones?
Oh, I just figured while I was reading it,
He's cool like that.
and I have to have two here, so.
All right, well, we'll move on to our consideration items now. Item number 6 is an update on Highway 1 and Manor Drive Overcrossing Improvement Project. And with us, we have Public Works Director Lisa Peterson to present the staff report and PowerPoint presentation. And we also have someone else. Hello.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. Lisa Peterson, Director of Public Works, and with me here tonight from our consultant team at AECom is Lynn McIntyre, and Lynn will be providing the update on the Highway 1 Manor Drive Overcrossing Improvement Project And Council may remember that AECOM was awarded the Phase 1 feasibility study back in 2018. That was completed in 2019. More recently, AECOM was awarded the Phase 2 study in April of 2022, which was the initiation documentation and also the environmental study. This is a study, this Phase 2 study is a study that's required by Caltrans, and the goal of this study is at the end of the study that we will have a project that's viable for state and federal funding. It's also important for Council to note that at the end of the Phase 2 study, it will be the city that ultimately decides what, if any, project would move forward based on the information that is developed during this Phase 2 study. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Lynn.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm glad to be here tonight, and I'm smiling at you all through my mask.
We're glad you're here. Thanks.
So I'm going to walk through this presentation about giving an overview of the Manor Drive Overcrossing Improvement Project, and I'm going to experiment with the clicker. Here we go. And so this is just a brief overview of the agenda. So we're going to look at the project location, the purpose and need of the project scope, the alternatives we're looking at right now, the project status, and the milestones. So just really quickly to start, so this figure shows the general boundaries of the project area in orange. And of course, the key part is around the Manor Drive overcrossing, including the intersections around Manor Drive and adjacent segments of Palmetto Avenue and Oceana Boulevard. This project area currently also includes the area around Milagro Drive and Oceana Boulevard. That has been included to allow for a study of a potential northbound on-ramp to be studied there. So, and studying that option doesn't commit the city or Caltrans to move forward with it. So the purpose and need of the project is basically, because the Manor Drive overcrossing lacks adequate lane, shoulder, and sidewalk widths to accommodate existing and future automotive, pedestrian, and bicycle travel, the project has these purposes: to improve traffic circulation and operations on and adjacent to the Manor Drive overcrossing, improve pedestrian and bicycle access at the overcrossing, and improve the overall safety of the facility. And the project is needed to address the existing and projected future traffic congestion in the Highway 1 Manor Drive area, which is primarily caused by the four-way stop signs at the intersections of Manor Drive with Palmetto Avenue and Oceana Boulevard. Manor Drive has sidewalks, but no bicycle facilities. And Palmetto Avenue and Oceana Boulevard have sidewalks on one side only and no formal bicycle facilities. So currently cyclists must share vehicle lanes or use the sidewalk. The overcrossing lacks shoulders, and it has narrow lanes and tight turning radii that require buses and large trucks to cross the center line into opposing traffic lanes to make right and left turns onto Palmetto Avenue and Oceana Boulevard. And finally, the Manor Drive overcrossing structure itself has cracks on the end abutments and some spalling on the bridge deck surface. So, so this is the scope of the project. There we go. That is being studied to address that purpose and need. So installing four-way traffic signals in place of the existing stop signs at the Manor Drive intersections with Palmetto and Oceana is key to improving traffic circulation and operations on and adjacent to the overcrossing. And providing safe bike and pedestrian facilities with better defined crosswalks and new ADA ramps would improve pedestrian and bicycle access at the overcrossing. Those improvements, along with widening or replacing the overcrossing structure and improving bus and truck turning radii, would improve overall safety of the facility. Finally, to help understand how to best address existing and future congestion at the Manor Drive overcrossing, the project will be studied both with and without a new northbound on-ramp at Milagro Drive. 2 build alternatives are currently being considered. Caltrans, in addition to the city, will be very involved in the design of the build alternatives because the Manor Drive overcrossing is in their state right-of-way. A no-build alternative will also be studied during this phase and the next. This is build alternative 1. In this scenario, the Manor Drive overcrossing will be widened or replaced without a new northbound on-ramp at Milagro Drive. This conceptual design, which is continuing to be refined, has sort of an hourglass shape. The configuration allows for wider sidewalks and striped bike lanes with some separation from traffic. It would also allow for buses and the largest standard truck size to make turns without encroaching into the other lanes, while reducing the structure costs compared to a standard rectangular bridge. The additional areas at the outsides of the hourglass shape would allow for some decorative hardscaping, and the city will have the opportunity to incorporate other aesthetic treatments for the bridge railing and safety lighting as the project moves forward. Both build alternatives will include stage construction plans to maintain traffic during construction and keep access to businesses open. The second build alternative is build alternative 2. And in this scenario, the Manor Drive overcrossing will be widened or replaced the same as in alternative 1. However, with this alternative, a new northbound on-ramp would be constructed at Milagro Drive by using a former bus pullout or bus stop located immediately north of the northbound off-ramp to Manor Drive and Monterey Road. And the purpose of this alternative is to determine how it would change projected traffic operations and congestion at and around the Manor Drive overcrossing, which is a main purpose of the project. Studying this option does not obligate the city to move forward with it, and Caltrans may also reject the on-ramp as the traffic studies move ahead. The city could also consider it in the future as a separate project. This alternative would also include some bikeway striping and crosswalk improvements in the area of Milagro Drive and Oceana Boulevard. And again, like alternative 1, this alternative would allow for stage construction to maintain traffic during construction and keep accesses to businesses open. This slide summarizes what's been done so far and the current project status. As I mentioned before, the project involves work in the California Department of Transportation, or Caltrans, right-of-way. So some of these terms are related to the Caltrans project development process. The first step was the preliminary planning study completed in mid-2019. During the preparation of that study, 2 community meetings were held, one in November 2018 and one in May 2019. The city pursued funding from the 2021 Measure A and Measure W program to allow for the project to proceed into the next phase of the Caltrans development process, called the Project Initiation Document Phase, the phase that we're in right now. The project was awarded funding and work began this spring to reevaluate the alternatives and options from the preliminary planning study that was completed in mid-2019. And Caltrans formally became involved in reviewing the project and design this August. As described before, we have 2 build alternatives. The on-ramp at Milagro Drive may be considered as a separate project, and the no-build alternative is also an option. So this, the next two slides kind of go through the different project milestones in this phase and then the next phase. So basically, like I said, we're in the project initiation document phase, and the next major milestone we're expecting is a community meeting that would be held this coming January. And then there's a set of reports that Caltrans has to approve as part of the next this phase of the project, the traffic engineering performance assessment and the preliminary environmental analysis report. And those are expected to be approved in February of 2023. We may be doing a second community meeting in February 2023 as well. And then the Caltrans, basically the final deliverable package in this phase of the project is called the Project Study Report Project Development Support Document, or PSR-PDS, as it's shown here, and that's expected to be approved in March. After that, the next phase is what Caltrans calls the Project Approval and Environmental Document phase. And so that is the phase where the design gets taken to a higher level of precision, and many additional plan details are developed. And also we develop the technical reports that will ultimately support the environmental document. So for this project, we're looking at doing a public scoping meeting for that environmental document in April of 2023. And then basically the environmental document and the project report, which is the engineering counter part to the environmental document, we expect to have complete, first administrative drafts of those in November, so in approximately a year from now. They have to go through the proper approval processes with the city and also with Caltrans. We expect to circulate that draft environmental document in March of 2024 and have a public meeting for that document in April of 2024. The final environmental document approval would be in about July of 2024, and the final step in this phase would be the project report approval, and that is expected in August of 2024. So that's all I had, and we invite your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of that work and for your report. I see we have one light on from Council, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you very much for that report. I have one question initially, and my understanding is essentially that in order to continue receiving the money, in order to move forward ultimately on the overcrossing project, if nothing else, essentially we also have to study the Milagro on-ramp. So two-part question. First of all, am I on track so far?
Thank you for that question. Yes, so that's correct. And as Council will remember, the first phase feasibility study did look at the Milagro on-ramp. I mean, part of the reason that it needs to be looked at is it was noted that putting that on-ramp on did reduce congestion at the Manor intersection based on the traffic studies. So that is one of the reasons it needs to be also looked at. But again, as was discussed, ultimately it will be the Council's decision what, if any, project they want to move forward.
Hold on to that microphone for a minute. And initially, I just want to make sure that it's clear, because I think I ask this question every time, and I want to make sure that it's as clear as I can make it, and my understanding is as clear as it can be, that unless we're studying both, we're not going to have the money going forward to get to the one if that is the option ultimately we choose. So I want to be clear on that.
That's correct.
Okay. Secondly, my understanding from the various dates that have been presented in this report is essentially that if and when we're going to make the determination of whether or not we're going to do both or just one, the timeline suggests it's August of 2024 when we'll be coming to that conclusion one way or the other. Am I reading this correctly?
That's correct, because at that time is when you're going to have all the information, so that would be the time that that kind of decision would get made.
So on the other side of public comment, if we receive any of the feedback that we did in some of the emails, I might be asking about roundabouts at Oceana and that sort of thing. I'm not going to ask that right now. But I want to just be clear that my understanding is, and this seems to be the confirmed, unless we are studying both, we don't have money to go forward even if we decide only to do one, and that the time in which we are going to be making that decision right now looks like August of 2024. So just for those out there who might have an interest in us breaking this apart and breaking a piece off, even if we were to go that direction, we won't be making that determination until August of 2024. Thank you.
Councilmember Vadalas.
I had a question about the parking. Because you're taking away the diagonal parking and moving it to parallel parking, is there a loss? I mean, what is the loss of parking?
The design team is still exploring options to maintain parking in the Manor Drive area. And I know that one option that was being considered is to change the parking in front of the Mazzetti's to parallel parking to accommodate a striped Class 2 bike lane along Manor Drive east of Oceana. They also had been looking at changes to parking in front of Walgreens to parallel parking to accommodate a combined right and through lane and a shoulder bikeway along Manor Drive west of Palmetto. That said, the team is also looking at maintaining the diagonal parking, knowing that it takes longer for people to pull in and out of parallel spaces. So the maintaining diagonal parking is not off the table, and I believe you're asking for like sort of a net loss of parking, and I don't think we have that number now because the design is still being refined.
Thank you.
Councilmember Beckmeyer.
If I'm not mistaken, we're in the coastal zone when we're talking about Manor, that side of Manor where Walgreens is. When we're talking about Mazzetti's side, we're not in the coastal zone. So on the coastal zone side, we don't get to have a net loss of parking. If we're going to lose parking, we need to find some somewhere else so that there is no net loss. Ideally, there would be a gain, but I realize we're trying to put bike lanes and pedestrian walkways and such in there. So I'm glad to hear that the diagonal parking is still on the table.
Thanks for that information.
Councilmember O'Neill.
I pressed the button because I thought I remembered something. Now I'm not sure. But at the end of the beauty smoke shop, beauty salon, and then there's O'Reilly's Auto Park. Is there an empty lot there? I think. Does anybody recall? Is there an empty lot?
Yeah. If you look on this map.
Well, it's gone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Can we bring it back?
But it's a pie-shaped, narrow at the street.
Okay. That's probably a good one. There is an empty lot there, correct?
That would be the other.
Yeah, pie shape. Is it possible, or would this be, okay, if you eliminate the diagonal parking on Manor, would it be possible to use some of the money to purchase that lot for a city parking lot to make up for the loss of parking?
Thank you. Yes, so I would say that that's a great idea. I mean, certainly it's something that we're looking at and thinking about. If we do lose parking, how are we going to try to regain that parking? So this is just the study phase. We are thinking of all of the options that are available for us out there, and certainly if there's, a way for us to, purchase property possibly through the project, or even possibly some widening of the roadway to allow for additional parking. Those are things we would be looking at so that we can minimize any kind of loss.
Okay, so then that's a possibility. Also, when you do the traffic study, could you look at the impact of an northbound on-ramp and how much less traffic would be going by Ocean Shore School? Because less traffic means less chance of a kid getting hit by a car on Oceana.
Understood. Yeah. I don't have the detailed notes about the traffic study coming up, but that would definitely be considered with both of the alternatives, what the traffic levels would look like in that area.
Okay. Thank you.
Show the timeline. I'm sorry, Mayor.
That's okay.
Timeline again, that was at the very beginning.
Oh, at the
there
very
was-
end?
At the beginning, I think there was one, or maybe it was just
It's in the end,
spoken
the later.
narrative. Here we go.
So this is the phase that we're in now.
Okay, so the traffic engineering study takes place now. Well, not now, but February 23.
Right. So basically, there are two sets of traffic studies that take place. There's one that's done during the project initiation document phase, and that's the traffic engineering performance assessment. And basically, that is a preliminary detailed traffic study that is largely based on existing data. And this is the stage of the project where the traffic engineering team works with Caltrans and the city to determine some basic things about the parameters of the performance that we're looking for with this project in terms of congestion relief, and also the exact parameters of the study, the more detailed study that will take place in the next phase. Because what happens in the next phase, the project approval and environmental document phase, there is a very detailed traffic analysis called the Traffic Operations Analysis Report. And it basically, it includes a collection of new data, such as traffic counts, and sometimes other data collection for regional traffic movement, and also modeling of future traffic operations using, the county model and so forth. So that will be a much more detailed traffic report, but that will be in the next phase, which we would have, I would expect that to be done by about this time next
So November-ish, or in the fall of 23 is
Right.
when that more detailed one would be taking place.
Yes, we would expect it to be about in that time frame.
So two notes, one on the one that's happening this February, recognizing that, we don't know what exact date it's going to be done. The week of February 20th, schools in the elementary schools in Pacifica are closed. So I would recommend that not take place Monday, February 20th through Friday, February 24th, because you're not going to get an accurate picture of what the impact is, even though it's a higher level study at this point in time. And it sounds like you would have, as long as you're not doing it in the summer, getting ready for this time a year from now with this super detailed one, because again, we don't have summer school at that site at least.
Yeah.
And so, and Skyline College is not in session, and none of the high schools are in session. So traffic impacts are definitely lessened in Pacifica during summer months.
Thank you for that.
So factoring those in, because Mr. Councilmember O'Neill has taught me over the years, it really matters when you do the study. right? That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you for that information. That's great. In February, this preliminary traffic study will have been completed already. They wouldn't be collecting data at that time. And our traffic engineering firm, Fair and Peers, is very experienced with when to collect new traffic data, and they understand the whole don't do it when schools aren't in session. So yeah, we should be good on that. But thank you. Those are great points.
Councilmember O'Neill.
I would also like, I mean, I won't be here, but I think the council would like to look at every month when we pay our PG&E bill, a certain amount PG&E puts in a fund for undergrounding utilities. And if we're taking and digging up all the streets, the bridges and everything else, and that is one of the main entryways into Pacifica, I think it would be good to see about undergrounding the utilities in that intersection in that corner. Especially, and the police can help you with this, the number of trucks that lose their brakes coming down Manor, they won't run into a light pole then. So if that could be part of the report, you know what I mean, when it, I don't know how much money was going to be in that fund. It takes years to, oh, look at this, Lisa wants to talk.
Yes, thank you for that. And that's actually a great suggestion. We'll take a look at it. I believe that the city borrowed advance on that fund, and I don't recall there being a lot of money in that fund, but we'll take a look at that. But that is a great idea and certainly would be beneficial.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I can add a little bit of detail because actually we were talking about this the other day. We are at a deficit in that PG&E funding. I believe it's in the 75,000 range, so we've been paying it off for numerous years. Could be the case that by the time construction were to occur on this, that we would have some of that allocation building up.
Do you know the reason for that? I know it's not the topic. Oh, is it Palmetto?
I believe it was Palmetto.
Yeah, that's what I figured. That was just before, like, not before you were on council, Mike, but before the rest of us were.
We borrowed from that. We took money from that fund to do Palmetto, but I wasn't sure how much goes in every month.
And Mayor, I have one last question.
Okay,
and then
'cause I
I'm
have
not
one
going to
too.
ask any more questions.
Go ahead. I only have one.
Promise.
Okay.
Would it be the case that in the more detailed study phase that you would be, your consultant would be taking into consideration and working with our planning department whatever we end up adopting as our RENA allocation and the sites that we're looking at where additional housing might be built in Pacifica? Would that be factored into projections for traffic?
Oh.
I will ask the traffic consultant about that. I think they typically try to be very mindful of local development projects, but especially with regard to the project area. I do know that they take into account like housing and employment increases as accounted for in Plan Bay Area 2050 or whatever the most current Plan Bay Area is. And I would expect that, I have seen in the traffic operations analysis report detailed lists of not only transportation projects in the area, but also development projects that would affect traffic circulation in the project area.
I'm just curious, that brings up a thought, is how, if you're looking at future planning for traffic, how does a traffic planner allocate the fact that an ADU can basically go in every one of those backyards? Does that take it into consideration?
That would be a question I'd have to forward to the traffic consultant. I don't know off the top
I'm
of
just
my head.
curious. You know, the landscape's changed. So.
It has, yeah. Absolutely. That's a great question.
And I just have a question. Can you bring up the slide that shows the project area?
Certainly.
Because there's been folks in the community talking about roundabouts and focusing on Oceana and Paloma. So I wanted to be super clear that that section is outside of this project area. Am I
Yes.
right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so yeah, Go ahead, Lisa, did you want to say something else?
Yes, I'd just like to add in, which was also noted in the report, that during this first phase study, the feasibility study, that area was looked at, and what it was determined through the traffic study that putting any type of on-ramp down in that area made no impact to the congestion at Manor. So that was why it was taken off the table, is because it wasn't doing anything to help the congestion at Manor, and that's the goal of this project, is to stop or minimize congestion in that area.
Okay, thank you so much, I appreciate that. All right, I think we're going to go to public comment now. So please, if you're at home, if you could prepare to make your public comment by calling in and getting in the queue, that would be great. And we have one public comment card here in the audience from Chris Retfield. So Chris, why don't you go ahead and come on up?
Good evening, staff and council. Chris Redfield. I'd like to thank Director Peterson for the presentation. That was very good. A few things just in no particular order. As noted in that preliminary planning study, and I quote, "The greatest congestion improvement was identified with the inclusion of the on-ramp at Milagro." That is subject to Caltrans approval down the road. Obviously, it's there right away, but it was the most significant improvement to traffic. Another one, a roundabout, which was just spoken on at the other potential intersection. Improvements were not advanced for further consideration since the improvements at Paloma on-ramp would not reduce the congestion at Manor. So that's why it's out of the scope on that. As you remember, I'm sure you definitely remember the northbound off-ramp at Milagro was the origination point for two wrong-way drivers, resulting in fatalities and serious injuries. That was at the Milagro going the wrong way. The existence of an on-ramp at that location most likely would have prevented those tragedies, impairment or not. Any reduction of traffic at the Manor overpass by adding an on-ramp at Milagro can only enhance the flow at the intersection. Mr. O'Neill mentioned too that any traffic reduction by Ocean Shore School can only be a plus. If you're not having to drive past that to hit that last northbound on-ramp, that's a definite plus. An on-ramp at Milagro can easily reduce that hazard significantly. An on-ramp will also alleviate traffic through the narrow neighborhood streets now used by drivers as a shortcut to avoid congestion leading to the overcrossing or the last northbound on-ramp at Monterey. Just a few points. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, we'll go to the phones to see if we have any folks in line.
We have one raised hand. It's for the number ending in 9182.
Okay, 9182. You can press *6 to unmute, and please mute any background sound.
Good evening, Council. This is Christine Bold. I just want to thank Lisa Peterson and the consultant for your presentation tonight. And I just have a few additional questions. One, in terms of the parking by Walgreens, I just want to... Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I'm having trouble with my phone. Right now, with the diagonal parking, at least the spots that are closest to the intersection, cars actually have to back into the intersection to be able to then pull forward. So just want to note that that's already a problem, and I agree. I think the parallel parking there would really be disastrous in that two-lane road that takes a lot of traffic heading south on Palmetto. Let's see. The traffic projections, I appreciate Sue Beckmeyer asking about the housing element, because I think that could be an area that does have a lot of new housing proposed as part of that, and the general plan also has rezoned that area to be much denser, both for commercial and residential. So I just want to make sure that we're taking that into account so that, we don't end up designing a project that becomes obsolete more quickly. And then I don't know if this one bridge is the only option we can consider now. I've heard a lot of complaints from people in the area, especially taking their children to Ocean Shore School or trying to ride bikes and really not feeling safe. And I'm just wondering if there's a possibility of maybe if we can take the existing bridge that's there now just for cars, and take over the whole width and take out the sidewalks, and then have a separate pedestrian bike bridge that would be much safer for pedestrians and bicyclists and children, whether that might be an option. Because it's so high up off the ground that we don't need to do, long ramps and so forth. It could just be parallel to the bridge now. So that might be something worth considering. Yeah, sorry, my notes are scattered. And I think the roundabout, I saw one person's public comment that they mentioned, and I don't think that was about Paloma. I think it was about Malagra. Suzanne Moore mentioned to me that was dropped because the cost was like $6,000 more, which certainly doesn't seem like enough to not consider that, if that's a possibility to alleviate the traffic in that area. So that's all. Thank you very much, and I really look forward to working with you through the next steps.
Thank you so much, Christine.
There are no other call-ins.
Okay, thank you so much, Emily, for your help. We'll close public comment and bring it back to council. Councilmember O'Neill.
I just wanted to kind of, being the longest serving guy here, or person, I just wanted to say is that this money that's funding this was originally part of a measure that was voted on by the citizens of San Mateo County. It was either 88 or 98, I forget which. And it was in the original documents of the ballot measure. So there is not a lot of leeway the city can do. And the only other project that Pacifica was going to get was the widening of the highway. And the council majority at that point, when they voted no for the highway widening, gave up a lot of the benefits that are going to be available here now. And that was a bike lane, a sidewalk, a breakdown lane, and emergency lane for cars. They could with a center median instead of concrete I-beams, that while you're idling on Highway 1, you would be able to see public work art. And so once this money, if it is voted down or changed or whatever the iteration is gone, it is gone. And I'm sure, and I know for a fact, there are many that the money that was supposed to be used here for Highway 1 widening is probably a graded overcrossing in San Carlos or San Mateo right now. They just finished an undercrossing for 25th Avenue in San Mateo. So I just would like to caution whoever's here on council after me, well, I guess I know who is, but the people on council after me, that once it's taken us 30 to 5 or 40 years to get this money and to this planning, and that you are not making a decision that will be fixed or changed in 6 months. You are deciding what the traffic is going to be and estimating the usage and traffic in that neighborhood for the next 30 to 40 years, which, given the density the city, the state is now forcing upon cities, the density there could almost double because of an ADU in every unit, the empty lots being developed, or whatever. So I would just urge caution for whatever the final decision is on this project.
Thank you, Mike. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember O'Neill, for reminding us why you are going to be sorely missed. I just wanted to take a moment and ask the question because we did receive a handful of emails, and I wanted to give the city an opportunity to respond to the suggestion that perhaps a roundabout at Paloma and Oceana could in some way be beneficial. A different commenter stated that, it frankly won't affect the traffic at the Manor Overcrossing, which is why we're not considering it. If you could either elaborate on that or give us more reasons why that is likely not going to be a solution in this instance. Or can we study it in conjunction with these other two things? Whatever you got.
Thank you. Yeah, so the first phase work did study that. And, in addition to, I think, the key element, which I had mentioned previously, is that it makes no impact at the congestion up at Manor, which is what the entire project is about. The other element related to that, too, is, the needing to get the right-of-way to put that in. It's also going to be a very difficult project. But that isn't what excludes it. What excludes it is it doesn't provide any relief of congestion at Manor. So basically, if you want to think about it in a different way, it's sort of an extraneous project. It doesn't do anything to benefit the project. So ultimately, let's say you were to try to move forward with that, and you went to Caltrans and you said, hey, we want to build this Manor Drive overcrossing. We also want to build this roundabout down at Paloma. And they would say, well, what's that doing for Manor Drive overcrossing? And you'd show the traffic studies said nothing, it doesn't help the congestion. They'd say, well, you can fund it yourself, but we're not going to help you. So there's no way we would get funding for it, even if the city decided for some reason that it was something they would like to have. Because ultimately what Caltrans is looking for is the facts. They want to see the data. And the data needs to show that whatever improvement that they're funding is going to improve the congestion for the Manor Overcrossing, which is the project that we've identified that we need and is important to the city.
Thank you very much.
Do we have any other questions?
Well, I'll make a motion to accept the report. That's what staff recommendation is.
Correct.
Do we need a vote on it?
I don't think, it's just an informational report, so I don't
okay.
actually think a motion and second is necessary, but you're probably welcome to do so if you'd like, Councilmember O'Neill.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'd like to take 5 minutes, please, before our next item. All right, let's get going now. We're going to move to item number 7, which is the approval of amendment to the agreement with GHD Incorporated for the Beach Boulevard Infrastructure Resiliency Project. We have Ryan Marquez, project manager, here to present the staff report and the presentation. Hi, Ryan. Nice to see you.
Thank you. I'm going to just make a little bit of an introduction. So again, Lisa Peterson, Director of Public Works. We do have Ryan Marquez here, our project manager for this project. And Ryan is going to be providing a PowerPoint presentation on staff's request to council. The council approved amendment to task order number 1 for the GHD agreement for the Beach Boulevard Infrastructure Resiliency Project design work. And council probably will remember back in June of 2021, the council did approve the GHD first phase feasibility study at that time and also confirmed the preferred alternative by both the public and the design team to move forward with a hybrid seawall that also had a rock scour apron and beach nourishment. And then most recently, council in June of 2022 during the budget process approved $1 million to come from our disaster accounting fund to go into this project so that we could continue to move the design forward. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Ryan for his presentation.
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, Ryan Marquez, project engineer. The presentation for this item, I'm going to briefly touch on project overview just to kind of bring us all back up to speed. I'm going to do a really quick and brief review on what happened in phase 1, just so that we can, re-engage on this. And then I'm going to go over how Phase 2 is going to play out and focus in on what is the scope for approval this evening, which is Phase 2A, which is a sub-phase. So we'll discuss the scope and costs, and we'll end with the recommended action. So just as a project overview, the project, of course, is located just outside of this building in the West Sharp Park neighborhood along the Beach Boulevard corridor. The reach of the project spans from north of Paloma by a few hundred feet, where the seawall currently ends, and goes all the way to the south, where the Sharp Park berm, the Sharp Park Golf Course berm begins. The project is currently segmented out into 4 unique reaches, as they have differing site conditions: the north wall, the pier wall system, and the south wall, and of course the south gap between the existing south wall and the Sharp Park berm. Just a reminder on the project goals from Phase 1, they are to replace the current seawall and outdated infrastructure in the area, to build climate resilience into one of the most vulnerable segments of the city's shoreline, to improve public access and use of Beach Boulevard Promenade, and overall to create a multi-benefit solution to protect public infrastructure, recreational activities, homes, businesses, and the community at large from further coastal erosion impacts. So just briefly to go over a reminder of what we undertook during Phase 1. It was the preliminary planning and feasibility phase. There was 3 main tasks in that phase, which were to come up with the existing conditions review, which is reviewed the existing documents we have on the area, as well as the actual site conditions. The second task was to do the multi-hazard risk assessment, which looked at future conditions in the area and the hazards in the area. And the third task was, based off the first 2, to come up with alternatives for a solution for the area and rank them. Throughout that process, we had robust community engagement with online workshops, as well as online survey and information sharing, which we look to continue into this next phase of work. That phase culminated with the identification of a preferred alternative that Council approved. And that preferred alternative, just as a reminder again, is a hybrid protection system that encompasses a deep foundation seawall, a rock scour apron, and a beach nourishment scheme. So moving into the overview of this next phase, which is the design and environmental phase. Phase 2 currently is broken out into 3 sub-phases. So there's 2A, which is the preliminary design that we are discussing for approval this evening. The end result of that sub-phase will be having a well-defined project description to be used for CEQA, as well as 35% plans, specifications, and estimates. The future 2 phases of 2B and 2C will be environmental documentation, which will be completing the environmental impact report and CEQA process. And 2C will be final permitting and design, which will result in a bid-ready project, completed plans, specs, and estimates, and all the needed permits to move into construction. So focusing in on 2A, the subphase that is up for approval this evening, there's 4 main tasks that it's distributed into. The first is management and coordination, the second is preliminary design, the third is environmental services, and the fourth is community and stakeholder engagement. So just on the first one, the contract with GHD is time and materials contract, which means the consultant will be charging their hourly rate based upon the agreement. and we need a budget for project management and coordination. So there's a lot of coordination within the large team that GHD has put together for this project, as well as putting together and keeping track of the schedule and work plan. A lot of coordination meetings internally with their team, as well as with the city and others, and of course tracking budget. The second task, which is preliminary design, is really the meat of the engineering analysis that needs to be done during this phase. It will encompass a basis of design report, which really will summarize the analysis and design that is really kind of enumerated below that first point. So there's going to be a lot more analysis and design of the seawall, so looking into, you know, if the secant pile is the correct wall to use throughout, or whether there may be some better options to the south, or, you know, obviously there's going to be different at the pier. So there's a lot more analysis and design needed there. They're going to be producing a more site-specific coastal hazard analysis, as well as collecting wave and water level data collection, which will really help hone in on the design of all three elements of the coastal protection structure. There's needed designs for the rock scour apron, as well as the beach nourishment scheme, so understanding what size grain of sand will be able to stay on the beach, how much is transported each season, looking at, you know, kind of past and projecting into the future to see how that all will work together. And then there will be a lot of work on the promenade, so looking at urban environment, features, amenities, and that includes visual simulations to see what that will look like. And then producing the 35% actual plan set. Additionally, there will be constructability review and cost estimation during this task, as well as a independent design review coordination. So the engineering will soon be going out with an RFQ or RFP to procure a third-party engineering consultant to help oversee and ensure that we're value engineering this project, and then that we're moving forward in, you know, the best fashion that we can. So it's just another set of eyes on this really big, important project. And then, of course, we have funding support as needed. The third task will be environmental services, and that will include just the kickoff to environmental services. So 2B is really, the subphase 2B is where the environmental document, the EIR, will actually happen. But in this first phase of 2A, we want to get it started, and the task 3 will be doing that through producing a CEQA project description, which will then be used in the notice of preparation for the EIR document, which will be sent out to the responsible agencies and folks that live in the area of the project for a scoping meeting. The fourth task is community and stakeholder engagement. So that will entail completing an engagement and communication plan, which will be brought back to council at a later date for their approval, which really details how we'll be reaching out to folks, what type of input we will be soliciting, and kind of really detailing how we're going to be doing the public engagement. The second portion will actually be carrying out that public engagement, which I will go into a lot more on the next slide, as I know that's a very important point for council on this project. And then we'll be continuing agency engagement with California Coastal Commission, One Shoreline, and San Francisco Parks and Recs, as we have previously. This will also include CEQA scoping meetings with responsible agencies, as well as the public, to ensure that we are collecting comments to make sure that the EIR is scoped appropriately. And it will also conclude with an engagement summary, similar to last time, where we'll wrap up in a report of what engagement we did, how we messaged it, what came of that engagement, all in a report. So just to touch more on the stakeholder engagement portion of this, as I briefly mentioned, we plan to come back to council at a later date once we have that engagement and communication plan kind of drafted out, so that it's very clear how we're going to be communicating with the public, what type of input we're going to be soliciting, and how we're going to be soliciting that input. Right now, for the item this evening, we have it scoped and budgeted to include 2 virtual workshops, 1 in-person workshop, 5 pop-up style workshops, 2 online surveys, a CEQA scoping meeting for the public, 3 smaller group meetings, so that could be city committees or other possible groups, and then 5 ad hoc meetings if council so chooses to continue that ad hoc. So that's how we have it scoped out right now. If there's any preliminary feedback or direction this evening, we're happy to take that to ensure that we can try to put in the engagement plan before we come back to folks at a later time. So just to touch on the Phase 2A costs, there's about $700,000 left over on the task order from 2020. This evening, we're asking for about $850,000, which was budgeted this fiscal year for a Phase 2A budget of about $1.5 million. So that brings me to the recommended action this evening is to approve amendment to Task Order 1 between the City of Pacifica and GHD Incorporated for planning, engineering, and environmental services for the Beach Boulevard Infrastructure Resiliency Project in the amount of $856,448.34 and to authorize the city manager to execute said amendment. This concludes staff's report to council. Myself, Lisa Peterson, as well as Craig Lewis from GHD are here to answer any specific questions you may have.
Great. Thank you so much, Ryan. Councilmember Vadalos.
I had a question about the pop-ups. Are you talking like farmers market? What type of pop-ups?
Yeah, it would essentially be similar. Yeah, it would be, go to the people instead of having the people come to us. So farmers market, we've done in the past for other projects. We've done, Fog Fest. We've done just, dog surfing competition. Anything that brings in a crowd of folks from the region as well as from Pacifica, we want to find those places.
Thank you.
Councilmember Beckmeyer.
Thank you for that presentation, Ryan. I want to verify my understanding on packet page 128 that the items listed under the community and stakeholder development is part of Phase 2A and that it is part of the funding request you're asking for tonight.
That is correct.
And my next question on that is, we're approving this and your recommendation is to work with GHD. As such, how much influence do you have over who does the community outreach piece? Because I'm just going to say it this way, I thought it went very well last time.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I'm following your question.
So there was a subcontractor that conducted the public meetings with us and with the mayor and I, that we were on the council subcommittee. Kelsey was the name,
yeah.
And I can't think of the name of the firm.
It's Kearns and West, I believe, is who you're looking for. The entire team that we had through Phase 1 is coming back. So yes, they will be involved.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from council before we go to public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will go to public comment. I don't see any cards from the audience. If you want to make public comment, please fill out a card now and do so. If you're going to be calling in from the phone, please do so now so you can get in the queue. 650-898-6965. Conference ID is 383-609-442. You can get into the queue, press *5 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. Mute any background noise. Emily, do we have anyone? Okay. Then we will close public comment and bring it back to council. Mayor Pro Tem.
I think I just had a question raised from Council Member Beckmeyer a moment ago, which I'll ask in a moment. As I was looking at the report, initially I'm reading along and thinking to myself kind of naively, oh, and what time of year are they looking at? They better do it in the winter time. And then I go down to the primary data material, and sure enough, yes, October through April, and also wave pressure sensors and downward-facing radar reflection off the pier, and it was really impressive reading through the report after the report, just the scope of the work that's going to go into making sure that this project, which may wind up being possibly the single most important infrastructure project for Pacifica over the course of the next several decades. It's impressive to see the kind of work that's going to be going into this project, so I wanted to thank the team. I did want to follow up on apparently what your concerns are with the way some of the meetings went last time in terms of input, or was I misreading what you were saying?
You were misreading. I thought it went very well, all things considered, considering we were forced by the reality of the governor's order to do everything online. We didn't get to have the pop-ups. We didn't get to have the tabletops. And despite all that, there was an interactivity that was added to the process that I thought was really excellent, and a really high-quality restating of public comment, like in summary at the end of each of the meetings, that I thought was particularly skillful. So that's what my concern was, is in as much as we're contracting with GHD, and I'm familiar enough, having learned from the city manager, that we don't get to pick the subs generally, but yet you can put in a good word for them, perhaps, by asking the question. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad I misheard you, and it's good to hear that the original team is getting back together.
Councilmember Beckmeyer, did you have something else, or did I forget to turn off your light?
I did. I'm so chatty tonight.
No, please chat away.
So at a future point in time, you're saying, can you give a zero in on it a little bit for us? Would you need information from us about the preference or not for forming a council subcommittee for this phase?
So the way that we have it planned out right now is if this was approved, we would probably kick off or in the new year-ish, and in the first couple of months, in parallel with a lot of the design, we would come up with a communication plan, and we'd bring that back to council, and I think at that time, the communication plan would either recommend or not recommend to continue that. That's the way we were seeing it.
Okay, that was the one question. One's a very specific question. Can you redefine for me PS&E, plan specifications and? Estimates. And if I'm understanding it, the estimate for this entirety of this phase is around $6 million.
For the full phase 2, that's correct.
We have some of that set aside already, and some of that budgeted already. And so if I'm looking correctly and interpreting packet page 129, the dollar amount we're looking for is $4,651,083. $4,651,830. What are we looking for here? What's the unfunded amount?
I see. I believe it would be about 4.5.
Okay. Thanks. Round numbers. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, just to touch on the ad hoc committee, I was really glad to actually see that, because even hearing just some of the statements, like reach out to the folks in the area, like my little senses went up, like, oh yeah, it might be good for us to have an ad hoc committee for public outreach. So thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate it. Do you have any other comments or questions or anything from council?
I did actually have one last thing. I noted in the proposal that was attached, or the timeline, the reference to the State Lands Commission, and I didn't see them listed in the concluding paragraph. I'm sure it's by reference, but you mentioned this, I forgot where it is. Specifically, the Coastal Commission, City and County of San Francisco, somebody else.
So what you may be thinking of is within the and there's there's going to be some analysis done where we're putting buoys out and the radars out on the pier. That's going to need State Lands Commission approval, essentially. And at this time, we don't believe we need to specifically reach out to State Lands for a lease at this point. We will need to do it later on in the final permitting.
Okay, and then I would request of council if we could consider looking at the recommended action. In the second line, it states, well, I'll just read it. Adopt a resolution authorizing Third Amendment to Task Order 1, Attachment 1, between the City of Pacifica and GHD Inc. for planning, engineering, and environmental services. Is it appropriate to add, just to make it crystal clear, and community outreach or community engagement? I realize it's imputed into all of the pages that are attached here, but would it be incorrect to include that in the sentence, or that's what I'm also asking council for your thoughts.
Sure, I don't have any issue with that.
It doesn't look like Director Peterson does either then? And City Attorney, you have no issue? Okay, okay, good. Then I'm ready to make a motion.
Well, and I really like being crystal clear. And so maybe if we could just clarify one more time where the money's coming from that we're talking about tonight, just so it's super clear to our community.
Sure.
Thank you.
So in June of 2022, the budget as well as capital improvement was approved by council, and there was $1 million allocated from Fund 38, the disaster accounting fund, for this project. And there is remaining funds from the state grant that was in, I believe, Assembly Bill 74 some time ago.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
If I may?
You may.
I'd like to move that we adopt a resolution authorizing a third amendment to Task Order 1, Attachment 1, between the City of Pacifica and GHD Incorporated for planning, engineering, and environmental services and community outreach for the Beach Boulevard Infrastructure Resiliency Project in the amount of $856,448.34, and authorize the city manager to execute said amendment.
Second.
That's not the reason.
Oh, okay.
You were faster. I was.
With the motion made by Councilmember Beckmeyer as amended and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Big Stick, I'll start the roll call vote with Councilmember Beckmeyer.
Yes.
Councilmember Vaterlos.
Yes.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Big Stick.
Yes.
Mayor Beer.
Yes.
And the motion as amended passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We're going to move on to item number 8, which is the purchase of city vehicles from Vehicle Replacement Fund 72. We will have Public Works Director Lisa Peterson with us again to report your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening again, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Lisa Peterson, Director of Public Works, and with me tonight I have Louis Lange, and Louis is the Superintendent over Streets and Motor Pool for the City Public Works Department. Also, just for your knowledge base in our audience, we also have Paul Labarini, who is our Field Services Manager. We have Chris Martin, who is our Motor Pool Manager, and from Police to help support the discussion on the police vehicles. We have Chief Stratton, and yes, there he is in the back. And okay, great, thank you. So tonight I'm going to be providing a presentation on the purchase of city vehicles from the Vehicle Replacement Fund balance, Fund 72. So just really quickly, the key recommendations in the report are requesting that the council approve a purchase of city vehicles from the Vehicle Replacement Fund 72 balance, including a 3% cost escalation for a total cost of $1,979,660. Additionally, we are requesting that you approve a fiscal year 22-23 budget amendment to appropriate from the Vehicle Maintenance Fund balance, Fund 72, for the purchase of these vehicles, and then transfer $500,000 from the Wastewater Fund 18 to the Vehicle Replacement Fund for purchases related to wastewater operations. Quick background, the Vehicle Replacement Fund 72 has been in place for many years for necessary city vehicle replacements. I believe it was put in place back in 2007. It has historically underfunded due to the city's operating challenges that we have had. And there have been a number of one-time infusions, such as EROF, that has gone into the fund at times in order to make sure that we make those critical vehicle purchases. At the inception, back in 2007, there were annual contributions that were coming from the general fund, also from the streets fund, the wastewater fund. The general fund contributions came from police, fire, public works, also parks, beaches, and recreation for their vehicles. Contributions started back in 07-08 at about $239,000 a year, and they have slowly dropped over the years until they actually stopped in fiscal year 1, and this, of course, was due to the city's budget challenges at that time. This most recent session, 22-23, we did add back in dollars to go into the Vehicle Fund 72 vehicle for this fiscal year. In fiscal year 21-22, the council did approve a $9,000 expense from Fund 72, and of that, $356,000 needed to go to the motor pool operating Fund 71 in order to cover vehicle repairs, and that's because we had that particular excessive vehicle repairs because we do have an aging fleet, and of course that then more repairs. The remaining funds then went into critical vehicle purchases. So since 2019, the city has purchased and ordered vehicles that include about $1,000 worth of fire vehicles, about $420,000 worth of police vehicles, about $460,000 worth of field services and engineering vehicles, and those vehicles are noted in your report. In 2021, staff contacted Management Partners, that is now called Baker Tilly, and requested that they begin development of a fleet replacement schedule or spreadsheet. For this is that we needed to, staff felt that we needed to have this schedule to allow us to understand the appropriate annual contributions that needed to be going into Fund 72 in order for us to get those critical vehicle replacements that we need. Additionally, we to help us identify what those critical yearly vehicle replacements should be. So we did have experts in motor pool that came in and provided that for us. Staff delayed a request this last budget session in 22-23 from council for an expense from the Vehicle Replacement Fund 72 because we wanted to finalize this experts from Management Partners. And just for your information, we currently do have a balance in our Vehicle Replacement Fund 72 of about $2.2 million. So the fleet replacement schedule was completed recently by partners, and the way the assessment schedule works is it looks at what the city should be replacing, what vehicles should be replaced, and also what contributions should be made over a 15-year period of time. And the reason it shows this is because typically vehicles are replaced for police vehicles, pursuit vehicles, typically about 3 years because these are very high mileage vehicles that are used by different shifts. So those are often replaced very quickly because they do start having maintenance issues. To other vehicles which typically are getting replaced in, let's say, the 10 to 12 year frame and sometimes getting pushed out to 15 years. The schedule was put together for staff for internal use to help us assess the needs of motor pool so that we can be making accurate assessments of what needs to happen there. The completed schedule that was done by Management Partners did identify a need for the city this year in 2023 to purchase 54 vehicles at a total cost of $4.4 million. And this was based on a point system that was put in place by Management Partners that looked at different things related to the vehicles. So it looked at things such as the age, repairs that had been done on it, utilization, the amount of downtime, all of those things got a certain number of points. And when the points reached a certain level, the schedule says this vehicle should be replaced. The other thing that the schedule did for us is it showed us over this 15 time what the contribution is that the city should be putting into Fund 72 for our vehicle replacement in order that we have that money available for critical replacements when we need it. And what it showed was that starting in 2023, we needed to put in about $1.1 million, and that would rise over that 15-year period. And at the end of the 15-year period, the contribution would be $1.6 million. Now, the city doesn't have $4.45 million in our vehicle replacement fund. So obviously we had a conversation with management partners, and they said, well, you know, then sometimes maybe doing as best practices. So you're not replacing as soon as you probably should be. But you'll need to just look at what you can push out. So luckily we have experts in our motor pool. They did go through the schedule. They looked at what they felt they could push out. And they tried to focus on those critical purchases that were absolutely needed for staff in order to complete their work. So the recommended vehicle replacements for 2023 fell in the categories of departments for Public Works and also for police. So for Public Works, the critical replacements included in wastewater, the VATCON, which I'll talk about in a minute. Also for field services, a 30-year-old dump truck and an other old vehicles, backhoe trailers, mower, and a skid steer. The field services vehicle costs comes up to a total of $686,000. The wastewater vehicle cost comes up to about $625,000. The VATCON, as council may know, is a machine that helps us to make sure that we keep our collection system pipes clean. It will suck out debris that's in there, and it makes sure that we don't have blockages that cause what we call SSOs, which is a sanitary system overflow. And of course, that is an environmental hazard, so we want to prevent that at all costs. We have been having maintenance issues with the VATCON. The VATCON is at its end of life, as it's been determined through management partners in our schedule, 10 years, and we've seen that because it's been in the shop a lot. We actually got behind on our maintenance this year. They've been rushing to try to get back on track due to the maintenance issues we've been having. So we do feel that this is a very critical replacement. The other thing that I did want to mention that during the wastewater rate increase discussion with council, when council approved the 3.5% increase over a 5-year period of time, that rate increase also did have a designated vehicle replacement cost with that 3.5% increase. So that is based also on the management partner study, which showed us what we needed to have, which starts at about, I think it's $200,000 a year to $208,000 a year, and over the 5-year period increases by consumer price index. So from field services, as I mentioned, we have some old vehicles. We have an old 30-year-old dump truck. When we look at the dump truck, the old backhoe trailers, mowers, and skid steer, which is basically a small loader, the average age of all that equipment is 19 years. So of course, we're having maintenance issues with that. This is critical equipment. This is equipment that we use in our storm emergencies. Other types of emergencies that come up, we have to have it. We use this equipment constantly. Also, for our critical infrastructure work. So we feel that this also is our critical vehicles that should be replaced. So from the police department, we have also some critical replacements, which include the Pursuit Utility Explorers. As I had previously mentioned, Pursuit vehicles, these are often replaced more often from a year perspective because they have such high mileage, and they're also used by different shifts. So they have a lot of different folks in them, using them all the time. They're used for high-speed pursuits. They're also idling, which is something that's important to keep in mind with police vehicles. These vehicles idle, and that idling, because they're getting out of their car to talk to somebody, or all the different reasons that they have to leave the vehicle. And there's a lot of idling that goes on. This actually adds thousands of miles to an engine. So it is important to replace those vehicles. Additionally, we have off-road old F-150 vehicle that we're looking to replace, a couple of older SUVs, an old ATV that's used for getting out on the beach for incidents there, or beach rescue, and also we're looking for a new Ford Escape or other type of vehicle for the new community service officer that is helping out with parking and also our OSV program. So the police department vehicle costs come up to about $611,000. I do want to mention that one of those pursuit vehicles, as noted in the report, was totaled. And so we are anticipating that we would be getting insurance money back from that, about $75,000. So, the amount, obviously, that would be reimbursed to the city, would be that amount. So this cost would then go down, what's coming out of the Fund 72 Vehicle Replacement Fund. As I mentioned, the pursuit vehicles are being driven 24/7 for different shifts. It's considered, best practice to replace these, before they get to 100,000 miles. The vehicles that we're looking at are, probably going to be well over 100,000 miles by the time we replace them, because as I mentioned in the report, a lot of these vehicle replacements are now a year out. This is just a supply, chain issue that we're seeing. And so a lot of these vehicles we're talking about, we're not going to see for a year, which is also, somewhat problematic, but it's just what everybody's dealing with right now. Again, they've already been having some maintenance issues. We've had transmission issues, some water pump issues with these vehicles. These are vehicles that are needed for emergency callouts and pursuits, and it is considered best practice to replace these vehicles. Now, again, as I said, we're not going to see these vehicles for probably a year. There are also some older vehicles. The F-150, that vehicle is an off-road vehicle. The SUVs that are police vehicles, the ATV that's used for the beach rescue, those are all averaging 15 years. Now, you saw the schedule I showed you before. Management Partners only gave us a 15-year schedule, because typically you're supposed to be replacing all your vehicles before then. But in Pacifica, we have pushed them out a little bit. We've got a great motor pool team, works hard, to keep those things in shape. But obviously, we do need to replace those when they get to a certain amount of years. There is currently no vehicle for the new CSO, which is a community service officer position. I did want to make a correction from what was in the report. We do have one full-time community service officer and 2 part-time community service officers. So right now, those folks are sharing one vehicle. We need to have another vehicle for them to be able to manage our oversized vehicle parking, permit program, and also do the parking enforcement. And I also just did want to touch very quickly on electric vehicles. The city currently does buy hybrids for appropriate areas of use. We currently have 4. I believe there's another one out there that's on order. These run on both gas and electric. But electric vehicles are, not available necessarily or appropriate for all city vehicle needs. So the first responder vehicles are, held to a higher standard of both use and availability. Electric Council knows probably, and right now a lot of people want to, especially with the gas prices, having gone up. So the costs have also gone up. The currently costs for them are pretty high, and there's long lead delivery times on those vehicles. The electric vehicles for police use is still in the testing phase, and staff is monitoring that. We continue to look at that. It's important to note that a lot of agencies, and especially smaller agencies like us, we look to bigger agencies on how they're testing their vehicles. So here at Pacifica, just like a lot of other agencies, we look to LA Sheriff's Department and also the Michigan State Police, and they actually test many, many vehicles. We look on those lists just like other small agencies. We look at the ones that test the best, so the ones that we try to purchase. And currently they don't have any EVs on that list. And again, that's because the testing phase. It's just one of those things. We'll get there. We're just not there yet. Market expanded into general use in the construction industry. Again, you'll see some, pieces of equipment out there if you look on the internet, but when you look around and you talk to agencies, small agencies like us, I mean, people just, don't have them. They're really not available or going to be suiting our use at this time. The city does small battery equipment such as chainsaws. We're looking at blowers right now as appropriate for our operation needs. It's certainly a direction we want to go. And it's just also important for the council to know that to implement an EV, the city would need to have new EV of our city facilities to support that EV fleet with the ability to charge during prolonged power outages. So it's definitely something that we have to keep in mind for our first responder vehicles and our equipment that we need, because if we have an earthquake and the power is out, for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, if we have just the, PSPS or the fire where, they cut off the electricity for a while and we're out for, 3 days, which I believe happened in 2018 here, how do you keep those vehicles going? And that's when you need those first responder vehicles the most. So it's something that needs to be planned for, looked at. It's got to be, the funding has to be appropriated for it. As we know, it's the funding to get an EV fleet and the EV infrastructure is going to be high, but it's certainly a direction we want to go in. And we, have been looking at it, and we do continue to monitor the advances for our city needs. So again, the recommended action tonight is for council to approve the purchase of city vehicles from the Vehicle Replacement Fund 72 balance, including a 3% cost escalation, to approve the 22-23 budget amendments, to appropriate funds from the Vehicle Maintenance Fund 72 for the balance of the purchases for the vehicles, and the transfer of $500,000 from the Wastewater Fund 18 to the Vehicle Replacement Fund for purchases related to wastewater operations. And that's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions along with Superintendent Lange and everybody else I mentioned who's out there in the audience. So,
thank you so much, Director Peterson. I appreciate your presentation. Councilmember O'Neill, followed by Mayor Pro Tem.
How long ago did we replace the VATCON? Because I seem to remember that not too long ago.
So the VATCON is 10 years old. So must have been 10 years ago. The one that we're replacing now is...
Seems like yesterday.
Yeah, it seems like yesterday, it does.
No, because I just thought it was like within 4 or 5 years, or did we buy a major replacement? There was another really big piece of equipment we bought, not a fire truck, but a wastewater, or maybe it was the cherry picker.
I think it was
the cherry picker? Okay. Yeah. It's not that important. I just thought.
Yeah, well, the VATCON is definitely 10 years old, and it's seeing its age. It's getting long in the tooth.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it wasn't too long ago, maybe a couple of months ago, that Peninsula Clean Energy was talking about offering fleet upgrade services to organizations interested in upgrading fleet to electric. And so I spoke of this briefly at council, but backstage asked city manager to look into it. It appears obvious from the presentation and the staff report you did look into it. I don't know if you might take a moment to elaborate what resources you found from Peninsula Clean Energy available. But part and parcel with the answer to that question, I want to express gratitude that you clearly looked into it. The point is not lost on me that for these gas-powered vehicles, apparently they're a year out coming into us. So I understand that right now with the supply chain being what it is, it would take longer for the electric vehicles. And as I'm following the media and seeing that the Ford F-150 is now available in electric form, and then of course I'm sure there's a huge backlog on people trying to get their hands on those. That translates into what I imagine will be a long process in updating city vehicles, especially those specialized vehicles that'll probably take longer to have the electric equivalents. But if you could tell us about what you found with the PCE resources.
Yeah, so regarding the PCE resources, and I believe the city manager had sent in something to council on this as well. So there are resources to look into starting to convert, and I think what they're really looking and also offering is exactly what I was talking about, like that EV infrastructure, right? How do you get that in place to support an EV fleet once all that testing has been done and all of a sudden everyone says, yes, yes, go, for first responder vehicles, for EV. Before that even happens, you have to start planning for this EV infrastructure that you're going to have. And how are you going to support these first responder vehicles during electrical outages? So I think one of the things that, to me is very compelling and is they're offering, I believe it was up to, $25,000, for a project, up to like 25% for, let's say, a $100,000 project, but I think the maximum was $25,000. To help you kind of start looking at that, like start planning this, let's start figuring out, how you're going to do this and move this forward, how we can get you to that point, because it's something that, again, if we were to do that, we would probably bring in an expert, right, to come help us, to show us how do we get from this point, to this big goal that eventually everybody's going to want to be at. And it's the start of that process, just like everything. It all starts off with just a kernel, right? And then, we build upon it. So I think what they're doing is they're offering that up to folks. Start thinking about this. We want to start helping to move you in that direction. We want you to start thinking about it and planning about it.
And so it seems like, first of all, I hope we can take advantage of their help, but it seems like we might have to start incorporating like electric vehicle chargers as a part of the vehicle replacement plan at some point. And I was also struck by this, and you alluded to it again in the presentation, Public Works does look to purchase smaller equipment as available that is battery powered, such as blowers. However, the equipment's capability must meet with the department's operation needs, et cetera. And I was reminded of our new Assembly member, Mark Berman, who I believe was one of the co-authors of AB 1346 about what he's calling SOARs, or small off-road engines. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that. My understanding is by 2024, the SOREs need to be all electric going forward. So it strikes me, along with having to invest in charging stations for EVs sooner than later, perhaps investment in batteries also has to be a consideration, because like you said, if we need to make sure that we're set if the grid goes down, like we were having the discussion with the REACH codes, it's another instance where the city's going to presumably need to start looking at battery backup and battery power investment in order to continue running these items that apparently are going to need to be electric soon.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and thank you for that. And, thank you also for bringing up that point earlier so that we could do more research into it. And, that bill was signed by the governor, I believe it was about a year ago, and implementation of that bill I believe, started in July of 2022. So what they're wanting to happen in California is that all these, small motors, right, including, lawnmowers, everything else moving forward, for vehicles as well, are going to be not gas anymore, right? Starting in 2024. Now, what they're saying is at that point, that's when they expect the manufacturing to be in place, and that's when they expect everything to be, starting to be produced that way. So it's something that's out there. They've set a goal. They're pushing us towards it. Similar to SB 1383 with organics, there has been some definite relaxation of, especially with the procurement, the organic procurement rules, because sometimes they also have to see what the reality is and, are all these manufacturers really going to get there by 2024? Is that really going to happen? But right now, that's what the bill says. So, we certainly have been looking at these smaller pieces of equipment, already, purchasing those as battery power. We're going to continue to do that. Also, with this bill out there, ultimately, everybody's going to be there, whether that really happens in 2024 or, 2 years after. Eventually, all of California is going to be there. So you're right. That's a great point. We need to be supporting those pieces of equipment.
Thank you very much.
I don't have any questions, but I definitely have some comments that I want to make after we go to public comment. But go ahead, Councilmember Beckmeyer.
Actually, I think I'll hold mine as well.
Okay.
And I'll go after you in case we're going to say the same thing.
No, that's okay. No worries at all.
I've been talking all night.
It's okay. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and open up public comment. If you're on the phone, please get yourself into the queue. And we have one card here with Margaret Myman. Thanks for staying around, Margot. Appreciate it.
Getting a little tired. Okay. Margot Myman, good evening. So acknowledging everything that Director Peterson just presented, especially with the fact that you've got this specialized nature of these various vehicles, I still wonder if this is perhaps a missed opportunity on the electric vehicle front. So certainly, purchasing electric vehicles, if at all possible, would help the city meet its goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions that are stated in the Climate Action Plan. And the barriers do include funding and EV infrastructure. And I'm glad that Mayor Pro Tem Bigstep mentioned the PCE program. I guess my question is, well, it's a two-part question. Are there any vehicles that are not, dump trucks or first responder vehicles? Are there any vehicles on the city fleet that would in fact be appropriate to be an electric vehicle? Is anybody driving a sedan? And if possible, could we take advantage of PCE's, public EV fleets program? And then my second question is there also possible funding from the 2021 infrastructure law? That law had $5 billion in EV charging for charging network. So is any of that coming down to the city level that would be appropriate for Pacifica to take advantage of? Is there anything in the the Inflation Reduction Act that is appropriate? So those are my questions. Is there anything that could be electric, and can we take advantage of funding that's out there? And is the number that you have proposed, the right one? So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone on the phone?
We have one call-in. It's the number ending in 5141.
5141? 5141, if you could press *6 to unmute and then mute any background sound. We'd love to hear from you.
Hi, this is Rick Nahas. I live in Sharp Park. In reading this presentation, it seems like it discourages the purchase of electric vehicles. And I'm not sure if you pass this, you cannot purchase an electric vehicle, but it would be good that we had actually something there that says where appropriate, if it makes sense, that electric vehicle can be purchased. And kind of the reason for that is if the city starts to purchase one or two, you don't have to support a whole fleet right away. You start getting, for 2 to 5 years from now, you start getting some experience in what it takes to deal with an electric vehicle. So anyway, I don't know, but does approval of this mean you can't purchase an electric vehicle? Because I don't think you should have it in there. Anyway, thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
There are no other call-ins.
Okay, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to council. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll go ahead and follow up on some of those more specific questions on what we were already discussing. And I quickly looked through this list and noticed that it looked like all the public works vehicles were specialized, and of course anything in police department is an emergency response vehicle. But to that point, maybe if not this round, in future rounds, have we identified any vehicles that are appropriate more immediately to electrify by their nature?
Yes, thank you for that question, and I appreciate the question coming from the public as well. We have been purchasing hybrids, so the answer to your question is yes. And as we move forward, we purchase vehicles. We should be purchasing vehicles every year. So really is the way that it comes down. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for the city in vehicles that are sedans to maybe be looking to going from perhaps a hybrid to a fully electric vehicle. And that opportunity could be as early as next year. So absolutely, there's opportunities. We continue to evaluate it. Our goal is to push in that direction, and certainly could be a next step for those vehicles that we had been purchasing that were hybrid. Maybe next time around, those kind of vehicles are going to be electric, full electric.
Thank you, and yes, as it comes up, I'll certainly be interested in continuing to ask after those, especially getting us finally to all electric vehicles. I know that the PCE program was designed this round to help somewhere between 6 and 7 organizations with this first round of funding. Did we find any element of it we could take advantage of this time? And again, my understanding is we will have further opportunities, especially when we have rounds of funding our vehicles that will lend themselves to more fully electric vehicles.
I would say that we would need to probably call and have a conversation with them related to it, and we can certainly do that and try to figure out how we could best use their resources in this area.
And then the final question I heard was about the 2021 public infrastructure funding. I would suppose that would relate more to charging stations and getting that kind of infrastructure in place, because I know we're going to have to trench and wire and all that fun stuff, which is not inexpensive.
That was my understanding. Yeah, and I haven't heard much beyond that.
Mayor Pro Tem Big Stick, I'll add to that a lot of the funding trickle down from the federal bills, infrastructure bill, et cetera, are kind of manifesting themselves now, and California Consulting is the granting firm that we use, and EV charging infrastructure and such is on that list to look at and see what are the grant opportunities that are going to work their way down to our level that we can apply for. That's happening. It's going to happen more in the future, but it's just there's no direct, clear source right now.
That was actually going to be my next question to you, and it occurs to me as we go forward and do start identifying those opportunities, that's another opportunity to deepen our relationship with our good friends in Congress, Mr. Kevin Mullen and Anna Eshoo. So I look forward to those opportunities presenting. Thank you.
Councilmember Vadalas.
I also want to thank you for looking into the electric vehicle side of it. I was walking, I'm going to give you 2 examples. I was walking at the Fog Fest with Senator Josh Becker, and they had an electric Ford F-150, very nice vehicle, and he said, "Can I buy this?" And they said, "Oh, no, we can't get them." And my sister was looking for an electric RAV4. She found that there were 2 existing in the entire United States. So it is the difficulty of trying to buy them at this time would be years down the line. So I think that as we move along and buy vehicles in the future, that we could look more into electric when they are produced more than they are now. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead. So I think we need some language somewhere, somehow, to assure that moving forward, like what it's going to look like for us moving forward, so that we have some, like a roadmap of how we are going to eventually move into the all-electric vehicle fleet. And who knows how long that's going to take, but I feel like we need to start having those conversations now so we have the language in place. And if we can have that conversation with PCE, we can always also fall back on the Stanford study when they had a pretty nice roadmap for us to put some EV chargers installed across our city. We're doing the REACH codes. I feel like we have to do everything that we can moving forward to assure the direction that we're going to go in. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if we're going to have an ordinance. I don't know what that looks like. But I think I just need to put that out there, that we have to have it in writing in a roadmap so that our community can follow along and can bring us information and resources that they clearly have that we don't, so that along the way we can take advantage of all of the opportunities that are out there for us to move forward. I completely understand that all these vehicles are necessary right now. I'm not even doubting that at all. But moving forward, I think we have to be super clear, and to have it be part of our climate action plan is going to be really important, because we're going to have to stick with this. It's not that everybody's going to want to be electric. It's going to be everybody's going to have to be. So we're going to have to get there somehow. It's just we're going to have to figure out how to do that. Councilmember Beckmeyer?
That's just where I was going. So, City Attorney, is it possible for us to add a whereas to the resolution? I know it's not your favorite thing to do, to write and amend resolutions and such documents as these on the fly in the middle of a meeting. But I am sensitive to the fact that there's a time consideration here, and I pushed the city manager a little on this, like, really, do we need to do this now? And he assured me, yes, we do. And Director Peterson restated it in terms of increasing costs, and that we have, if I'm not mistaken, and either of you please jump in, we have bids on these already that we will lose and will go away, and we'll have to start over, and it will definitely cost more.
That's correct. Yes, we talked about that in the report. There's a number of these vehicles, including the police vehicles, that, we've been able to get them to hold their costs. And they've been waiting and waiting, but, we told them we're coming to the meeting tonight. We're hoping to get the approval. And we want to lock in. We are locked in. We want to stay locked in because, of course, we feel that prices are going to rise significantly over the next year.
So, to the mayor's point about we need a roadmap, and to what we heard tonight about, anecdotal from council member Vaterlas, but in the presentation, the inability to purchase these vehicles due to supply chain right now, I'm almost wondering if we can't acknowledge that in a whereas electric vehicles are not available, or whereas electric vehicles do not exist at the present for the heavy equipment purposes that we need them, right? Because we do need to be internally consistent. We're reminded that our climate action plan is 8 years out of date. I know there's going to be a lot of expectation from the community to heavy up on our goals for that. And if the first thing we do is not state anything about electric vehicles in our resolution, then it seems like we're not serious. And I think we are. So it is not my goal to delay this process for reasons that I stated and you confirmed, but it is my goal to figure out a way to get some language in here acknowledging the challenge, thus the impossibility of obtaining electric vehicles presently. And secondly, is there a place to, maybe it's even in the resolution, the recommended action, adding a third item to it, stating the council's intention, direction to staff to produce electric vehicle replacement plan as part of our annual vehicle replacement. So a couple points. Go ahead.
So if I could just offer some initial thoughts, and that is that what you are requesting does not need to be in the resolution. It can actually just be a verbal direction that would be noted in the minutes to staff to do whatever staff needs to do in terms of analysis, research, to assure that electric vehicles are included in our fleets at the earliest opportunity possible. So, because having trouble understanding what direction this resolution is focused on the actual purchase of city vehicles. We are not purchasing electric vehicles, so we are to include it in this, but what is normally done is after the council adopts the resolution, as part of this agenda item, you can also give additional direction to staff, which would be part of the minutes, to do further analysis to assure that electric vehicles are purchased and included in our fleets at the earliest opportunity.
Thank you for that. Here's why I wanted it in the resolution. And it's for the simple reason that when items come to us again, very often the previous resolution or resolutions that relate to that topic are copied or referenced in the packet that we receive. And so the minutes of this meeting won't be. And I think what I'm trying to find a way to do is honor what the mayor said. And maybe if the mayor's okay with doing a direction to staff, then I should stop pushing on this point. But it's really, for me, about putting a marker down and saying, and that one thought I had, and I wasn't completely following what you were saying, Director Peterson, about the cost of undertaking this evaluation and what would the funding source for that be. And I wondered, is Fund 72 a fund that you can use for that, or is it only for the capital purchase of the actual asset?
It's only been used for vehicle replacement, so I think that that's historically all it's ever been used for. I mean, if it could be used for something else, I guess we'd probably have to ask our finance director. But yeah, it is used for those critical vehicle replacements, and I know that, doing EV fleet infrastructure is going to be a huge, huge cost. I think that we probably want to go in another direction to try to identify funding through other sources that are probably going to be more and more readily available as we continue to move forward into this electric vehicle age.
Okay, got it. Well, so, Mayor.
Well, and I also think that if you can plan to be a huge part of the discussion in our climate action plan update, like, we want to make sure that public works is part of that discussion so that we have language in the climate action plan moving forward that comes from y'all, right?
Mayor Beer, Councilmember Beckmeyer, that is actually one thing I was going to suggest, because what you're really talking about is a policy approach. Yes. And direction related to purchasing policy.
Yes.
And so a climate action plan item could be to develop such a vehicle purchasing policy. When we get to that, that could certainly be discussed. Let me back up and say, if it's the council's preference, we could add a whereas into this resolution that does say, whereas the city has examined available vehicles and looking at electric vehicles for these priority purchases, and in the future will continue to do so. I think one of the challenges is this market is going to change dramatically over the next couple years. So I can't sit here and predict what the purchasing price preference needs to be for an electric vehicle, Ford F-150 versus a gas one at this point in time. And so the real policy decision in the future is going to be, we know we don't have enough money to buy and replace the vehicles that we need to replace. So how much money should be set aside and used to buy more expensive vehicles and less of those? And that's an important policy discussion and decision. Thus, a future step that could be identified in the climate action plan to work on that and have that conversation with council.
The policy conversation.
Yeah, a policy conversation in the future. I think that's what I'm hearing. Mm-hmm. The market and the trend is going to push us that way anyways.
Yeah.
You know, we're unfortunately not a city with a big bank account that can be an early adopter to technology when we have very fundamental needs on our vehicles, but we can think aspirationally about that and plan for it. And I think that's what you're talking about. And you have not just the vehicles, but you have the EV infrastructure and it all coming together. And the climate action plan is sort of the vehicle to really be thinking about that at a high level planning perspective.
And we already are planning on doing that anyway.
Yes,
so
we are planning on doing that. Off the top of my head, I don't recall if there are already policies in the climate action plan that address vehicles, and Planning Director Murdoch does know that, but might not be necessary right now. Yeah.
But we didn't ask that in advance, so we're not going to ask it now.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
But I think, I guess I'd want to clarify, you know, is the council's preference to leave this resolution as is, or add a whereas that says something about we're cognizant of the need for this transition, and we did look at that, but it's not part of this purchasing package? Because we could add general language like that. You could leave it to me to develop that.
Yeah, and we can add that to the motion?
Yeah. Okay.
We can add that to the motion?
Yes.
Sure. So I would suggest on that, after the whereas, it says the city desires to purchase vehicles from the Vehicle Replacement Fund 72 for immediate urgent needs, and whereas in looking at these purchases, the city will evaluate or evaluated the feasibility of electric vehicle purchases, and for this purchase, none were found feasible due to the kind of equipment, something like that.
Have evaluated and will continue to evaluate.
And will continue
Yeah.
in future vehicle purchases. We'll always look at the hybrid and EV options and make that operational decision and present that to council as part of the package.
All right, cool.
And then certainly we'll note, you can, you know, I'm getting the direction just via head nod from council that when we look at the climate action plan, vehicle purchases and EV infrastructure is going to be an important part of that.
Huge, yeah.
So do we need to add number 3 to the recommended action per what the city attorney said in terms of direction?
No.
I think somebody can make a motion to adopt the resolution as amended by the city manager, and that language that we just read would be incorporated into the resolution as part of the motion.
As amended. I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move approval of the following actions related to city vehicle purchases. 1, approve purchase of city vehicles from Vehicle Replacement Fund 72 for $1,922,000, including a 3% cost escalation factor, for a total of $1,979,660. 2, adopt the resolution to approve fiscal year 22-23 budget amendment to appropriate $1,979,660 from the Vehicle Replacement Fund 72 for purchase of city vehicles, and transfer $500,000 from Wastewater Fund 18 to the Vehicle Replacement Fund 72 for the purchase purchases related to wastewater operations. And 3, adopt the resolution as amended to include
Language as
as amended by the city manager regarding electric vehicle.
Second.
Start the roll call vote with Councilmember Beckmeyer.
Yes.
Councilmember Vaterlos.
Yes.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Big Stick.
Yes.
Mayor Beer.
Yes.
That motion as amended passes unanimously.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you for driving old
indulgence.
cars. Okay, well, moving on to consideration item number 9. Consideration and adoption of a resolution approving First Amendment to restated employment agreement between the City of Pacifica and Kevin Woodhouse as city manager. We have Michelle Kenyon, our city attorney, to present the staff report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. You will recall that Mr. Woodhouse was first hired by the city back in 2017, and the city entered into an employment agreement with Mr. Woodhouse back in 2017. That employment agreement was amended several times following annual reviews. Back in 2021, that employment agreement was then amended and restated as a new employment agreement. Now in 2022, the council conducted another performance evaluation that was facilitated by Dan King of Baker Tilly, and following the conclusion of that performance evaluation, the council directed me to prepare an amendment to Mr. Woodhouse's employment agreement, and I'm now going to provide the oral summary of what the amendments to that agreement will be. Council directed me to provide an amendment that would increase Mr. Woodhouse's salary and benefits as follows. The annual base salary for City Manager Woodhouse would be increased by 5%, but annual compensation of $267,490. This particular adjustment to the city manager's salary would result in the city manager's total compensation being 4.96%. Low medium for comparable cities in the county. First Amendment also provides for a modification to Mr. Woodhouse's employment health insurance benefits, particularly medical, dental, and vision plans, to reflect the same benefits that are provided to other department heads in the city. These adjustments are proposed to be effective retroactively to the start of the first pay period after October 9th. Which was Mr. Woodhouse's hire date. And in terms of a fiscal impact, approval of this first amendment will result in a total fiscal year impact of $14,900, with approximately $11,500 of that total amount being expended during fiscal year 2022-23. And this amount can be covered by the current city manager's office fiscal year 2022-23 budget. This time, we're asking the council to approve the resolution, staff report, which will authorize the mayor to execute the First Amendment to restated employment agreement between the city and Kevin Woodhouse. I'm available to answer questions, should you have any.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to go ahead and go to public comment, and then we'll come back to council. So I have one card. If folks are wanting to call in, please dial in now to get into the queue, 650-898-6965, conference ID 383-609-442. We have one card from the audience. Bob Hutchinson, come on up. And you'll have three minutes.
Robert Hutchinson.
Good evening.
Really nice in here. Are they going to knock this building down sooner or later? Anyway, yes. Mr. Woodhouse is a very hard-working employee. With that, he works very hard at hiding information from the public. He's done a good job at that. his whole career here as far as what I see. These are some things from the International City Managers Association. These are their tenets. Demonstrate by word and action the highest standards of ethical conduct and integrity to all public, professional, and personal relationships in order that the member may merit the trust and respect of the elected, appointed officials, employees, and the public. I think it kind of forgets the public. You're supposed to serve the public also. I'm here kind of representing Therese Dyer. She's been ill and her son's in the hospital right now, dying, and so she couldn't make it. But she testified earlier this year that she had gone to City Hall to speak with Mr. Woodhouse, and he had kicked her out, yelling and screaming at her out of City Hall. This 90-year-old Korean veteran who was not saying anything bad. She was just asking about her sewer lines and if the city may have been responsible for them. This is unacceptable, totally unacceptable and disgraceful. And this International City Managers Association would probably kick him out of the association if they found out about it. I haven't reported it yet. But, I mean, you can go on and on. The things council has allowed him to do during his term as far as hiding information from the public, using the drafts loophole in the California Public Records Act to keep information from the public, saying finished reports from an outside agency are drafts, and he doesn't have to release them to the public. That's ridiculous. But your attorney says, oh, that's legal, even though there are other documentation from that same attorney's office says it is legal. I mean, it's not legal to do that. So you guys have to learn on your own what the law is and not rely on the city attorney so much, because they make money when we get sued. Either way, they make the money. Am I out of time or what?
Not yet.
Conduct unbecoming members should treat people fairly and with dignity and respect, and should not engage in condone and bullying behavior. I'd say that's bullying behavior, chasing an older lady out of City Hall, yelling and screaming. She could sue the city, but she's not going to. But she could, but somebody else might. And that's another thing. This person has acted many lawsuits to the city, including the one I have currently.
Thank you so much,
All
Mr.
right.
Hutchinson.
Thanks a lot, and I would say don't vote for the raise.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone on the phone?
No.
Okay. We'll close public comment and bring it back to council. Councilmember Beckmeyer, followed by Mayor Pro Tem.
I hadn't intended to speak, but in response to in having been inspired by the public comment, I would like to state for the record that I've never seen Mr. Woodhouse display anything but the highest standards of ethical conduct in the carrying out of his duties as the city manager of Pacifica. I don't know, I wasn't there, and the individual speaking at public comment wasn't there, so I can't speak to hearsay on what did or didn't occur. But I know Kevin Woodhouse. I've worked with him now for 4 years-ish, almost, and I do not believe that the account we heard in public comment occurred the way that it was stated. I just needed to say that for the record, and thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Councilmember Beckmeyer. I would tend to err on the side of your sentiment. And while I probably will not be agreeing largely with the public commenter, what I did hear and what I do want to say is that I am very sorry to hear about Ms. Dyer and what her son is going through, and that she has to be with her son in this moment under such circumstance. And if you would send my regards to her, that would be appreciated. That much I can agree with. I did want to take the opportunity, regardless, to say a word or two because, first of all, our staff is exceptional. We as council couldn't direct anything to happen if our staff didn't make it happen. And I think that I've heard you speak in terms of your role, Mr. Woodhouse, enough to hear that you are fully cognizant of that. And that having been said, some of the things that we've accomplished under extraordinary circumstance from my perspective in terms of staff resource and funding, it's hard for me to imagine under other leadership we could have accomplished. For me, the three highlights, I immediately go to the Civic Center renovation project where our staff had been working under conditions of health concern due to mold, but also a lack of a bathroom for I don't remember exactly how long. And what's more, having opened up those walls and seeing the pictures of these beams that could have fallen on their heads at any moment because they're so deteriorated, I am so happy you were at the helm to facilitate those buildings becoming safe for our staff to work in. With you at the helm after 13 years of trying to get a general plan update accomplished, it finally happened after almost a decade and a half. Those are two big things in 1 year. Add to that Measure Y, which I mentioned earlier. We were looking at a fairly dire economic state next year, if not for Measure Y, which again, you spearheaded that effort that was successful, and as a result, our city will be fiscally sustainable. That's an extraordinary list of top three, let alone the ridiculous amount of work that goes into everything else, which I don't have the time, or frankly the knowledge, which you have. And so thank you. I'm so happy to vote for this. I'm sensitive to all our employees, and I don't know what we'll be capable of in the coming year. I'm familiar with the cost of groceries intimately, and I wonder after what we will be able to ultimately do for all our employees, and going forward that will be a measure that I'm looking at you by. But right now I'm looking at this year of accomplishment and professionalism, and that apparently our staff feels very well led by you, and thank you.
Councilmember Vadalas.
I also want to thank you for all the things that have gotten accomplished in the past several years. But this year especially, there are such big items that, I mean, we're working on the housing element, the Sharp Arc specific plan, the general plan, lack of employees that left and trying to hire new employees. Those are all big issues. And to still be at a range that's 5% under what the other city managers in comparable cities are being paid, we really appreciate that this amount that we're granting you. So I'd just like to say thank you.
So I'd also like to comment quickly. Is Mr. Hutchinson still here?
No.
Well, I've been worried about Therese Dyer. I've been worried about her. I've been thinking about her like she hasn't been here. So I'm really happy that he mentioned her tonight, and I will make a point of reaching out to her specifically, because I've done that in the past, and quite frankly, I miss her. So let's talk about Kevin Woodhouse. And I'm going to take time to talk about you, Mr. Woodhouse, because what I have seen from you in the past 4 years and what you have taught me in the past 4 years is how to lead under pressure, how to make your staff feel valued and supported and empowered, how to make us feel valued and supported and empowered, the brilliance behind your Vision 2025. Like, I didn't understand how brilliant that was until the economic, was the meeting that we had? Opportunity. Thank you. Where I heard all the different conversations going around the table about the different economic opportunities across our city. And that's from you. That Vision 2025 is your baby. And so I thank you for that. It is not my strong point, and I've learned so much from you about the economic viability of our city. And I think you deserve this and more. I think we are lucky to have you. I think there's many, many, many folks out there who understand this and have seen how you have pushed our city forward. So that's what I have to say about that. Mike, you want to add?
Yeah, I have to say I've worked through between permanent and temporary city managers, 5 city managers, and I think 4 or 5 school superintendents. And basically they are the CEO of the corporation or business called Pacifica. It's a service industry where 90 to 95% of all the expenses are personnel costs. And I think when looking at the turnover of city managers and the scuttlebutt you hear and you read about the past 2 years, I think that Kevin has done a very good job, and I echo everything my companions or colleagues up here have said. So I think we are fortunate to have Kevin as the city manager, and he has not kicked the can down the road like a lot of previous city managers and city councils. He grabbed the bullhorn of the general plan. He did the Sharp Park specific plan, the Rotting City Hall. So I think, and he is open to ideas. I've brought several ideas that he's looked at and dismissed some, but he's looked at the others and said, yeah, let's move forward. But that's his job, to herd cats up in the council. So anyhow, I support what everybody else has said, and I'll make a motion.
Right on.
Move to adopt the resolution approving the First Amendment to restated employment agreement between the City of Pacifica and Kevin Woodhouse.
Second.
Second.
I have the motion by Councilmember O'Neill and seconded by Councilmember Vaterlos. I'll start the roll call vote with Councilmember Beckmeyer.
Yes.
Councilmember Vaterlos.
Yes.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Big Stick.
Yes.
Mayor Beer.
Yes.
And that passes unanimously.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to adjourn our meeting at 10:30.